Hey, Steel Watchers, it is mine and especially Eric's favorite time once more.
No! No!
Shush.
No!
Shush.
No!
It is, as you can tell from the screams of torture, it is time for us to start thinking about our top 5 episode for season 3. So, as
Our
always,
top 5 episodes episode.
Yes, exactly. That's how it sounds. That's what I meant. So as always, we welcome and encourage everybody else's contributions as well, because otherwise it's just the two of us talking. And I mean, like, we do that enough. So if anyone wants to submit their top 5 episodes of season 3, please do so. You can send them to the email. That's probably the most preferable spot to send them, so we can just compile them and make a list. And yeah, we will read them. Let us know whether or not you want us to say your name when we read it or not. And
what name you want us to use. If you want to be introduced as Lord Darth Vader. Okay.
I had a student who wanted to be called Batman once, so I did. So yeah, please send us your top 5s so that we can stretch out the episode and pad it. No, I'm serious. Like, we can include it with quality content.
Yes.
That's pretty much all I had to say.
As opposed to what we normally do. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Welcome to SteeleWatching, which is a podcast for Remington Steel fans. My name is Sara, and I am not a podcaster, but I play one on TV.
And I am Eric, and I am on the back half of the love-hate relationship of spicy foods.
Ooh, that's never a good place to be. Never a good place to be. I've been there. It's yeah.
Yes.
It's good. It's good while you're eating it, but then after.
Yeah. Well, it's like they say, it burns going in, it burns going out.
And on that note, there's no good way to segue this.
No.
And we're going to be talking about season 3, episode 18. Now You Steele It, Now You Don't. So yeah, this episode first aired on March 5th, 1985, and it was written by John Worth and directed by John Tracy. That would have been an interesting recording moment, the two Johns, right? Having the writers there and trying to figure out who's
Would that be like 2 porta potties? No. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's going to be one of those days, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I guess adding to the toilet humor, did you know how my dad told me to remember the names of the Beatles? He had a memory device to help you remember the names of the Beatles. He would say, "By George," said Paul, sitting on the John, "where did my ring go?" Yeah. Just popped into my head. So hey. I guess mnemonic devices work because I have not forgotten it.
Anyway.
And okay, so I have both the TV Guide synopsis and the DVD liner notes here. And once again, I don't remember why. So I will make these notes.
When you do that, maybe you should do something like write yourself a note.
Probably. A note for a note. But I'll read them and hopefully something will trigger in my brain. It might have just been that. Yeah, I felt both of them were accurate in different ways. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So the TV Guide synopsis says, Laura delivers a message which triggers an importer's apparent suicide, then discovers she was used in a blackmailing scheme. Okay. And then the DVD liner notes read, Laura uncovers a deadly blackmail scheme where she's hired by an antique dealer to catch a kleptomaniac. I think I know why I did it. Those sound like 2 different episodes once again. I just thought it was
kind of do. They kind of do.
I just thought it was interesting because the first one sounds more like it has to do with Laura investigating the importer.
Mm-hmm.
And the DVD liner notes kind of cover more the Majak element of it, which is also kind of inaccurate because, I mean, she is hired to catch a kleptomaniac, and they keep referring to her as a kleptomaniac, but she's not. She turns out not to be. Like, she's not.
Yeah. Well,
so, yeah.
It's all in how you present it.
Well, and you would think they would just write hired by an antique dealer to catch a thief, because until we get in, I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, you might want to write yourself a note next time to explain to yourself so that you
do that.
But in all fairness, I do the same thing. I will do something and I know exactly why I did it, why I wrote it down, what it means. And I come back to it later and it's like, what?
No clue.
No clue.
To be fair, I wrote these notes a while back too. So usually I remember this stuff.
Yeah. Well, we have been struggling to get this one recorded. It's been
I had no
scheduled, rescheduled, and rescheduled.
My voice is still kind of like not all fully back, and it's been 3 weeks. Like I can talk and that's fine, but I still can't sing along to the Spotify in the car. So
the people in the car next to you are grateful.
Hey, I'm good at karaoke. All right, so
I don't karaoke.
Our opening scene, we begin inside what looks to be a very upscale antique store. We've got Laura. She's standing there. She's looking at some figurines, and the person behind her, supposedly the store owner. We later, of course, learn that isn't actually the store owner, but he's standing behind her when a blonde woman walks in and she starts browsing. He and Laura exchange a look. The man walks over to her and addresses her as Miss Kelton. She points to a figure, asks what it is, and he tells her it's a 12th century temple figure. And, okay. I mean...
I've got questions, but I'll save them.
Yeah, well, you can go, I'm sure your questions are probably similar, but we find out later on when she presents the figurine to the real Majak, and she says, what'll this get or whatever, and he says 20 to life or whatever his response is, because it is a legitimate 12th century antique, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't put something like that on the floor of an antique store. You don't even have something like that.
Okay, well, so
did I just
fine, you brought it up.
I have a history degree. I should specify this. I was, prior to deciding to teach, one of the options that I was sort of floating around in my brain was museum curator or something to do with artifacts and working in a museum. This sort of thing would not be for sale in any commercial way, shape, or form. It would be culturally significant. It would be in a museum. And I would like to think Laura would know that.
Well,
I don't know. It seems a bit insane.
Well, she may not have recognized what it was specifically, that it was an antique. And there are antique stores that do sell pieces like that, I'm sure. My issue is, there's a couple of issues. First of all, we find out that this Majak is a fake. So my first question is, how did he get in there?
Well, yeah, that too.
The place was locked. The guy who really owns it was nowhere to be found. It's not like he showed up and said, "Oh, you want to impersonate me? Sure, come on in. Just let me know when you're done, and I'll come in and lock it up." It doesn't work that way. Second, I don't care how much security you have on your doors and locks and cameras and other stuff. If you have a store full of, as you were saying, full of items worth thousands, tens of thousands of dollars each, and they're small enough to be put into a bag or a pocket, you don't leave them out in the open. And especially, you don't leave one customer who's looking at one of these items to attend to another customer without locking that first item up first. I mean, go to a jewelry store, see how they behave. And these are only pieces that are, a couple $1,000s a piece. They don't leave something out with a customer and walk away and leave that customer with that stuff unattended. It just doesn't happen.
Well, that should have been the red flag to Laura, because these aren't as for how we got in there, I can only assume that because lockpick kits are a dime a dozen in LA.
What, there's no alarms on a jewelry store? Excuse me? Or an antique store?
Antique store. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that the actual material that he sells is not 12th century temple figures.
Well, but even if it's a retail store that's got items that are only worth a few $100 to a few $1,000s a piece. I mean, he's got all kinds of stuff in that store. He's got literally tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of merchandise in there. I'm sorry. I don't care if it's not 12th century temple figurines. You still are going to have an alarm on that building.
Oh no, I'm not. I totally agree with you. This is what what we call, this is a hand wave, right? We're supposed to hand wave this.
This is everybody hand waving all at the same time. This is the wave in the football stadium. I mean,
but I mean, even with like, my issue is just Laura not realizing that this sort of thing would not be on the floor. Right. Yeah. And we know that the real Majak doesn't have this sort of thing on the floor. When she shows it to him, he recoils like it's a snake about to bite him because he knows better. You can't have anything that old and that culturally valuable in an antique store. It just wouldn't happen. It would end up in a museum. It would end up, governments would come and sort of claim it and say, like, this is relevant to our culture. Like, this needs to be here. So the fact that they've gone with something, this just seems over the top. Like, you would think it would be something like, oh, okay, you've got 100-year-old China set or something like that, right? I guess maybe Laura buys into it because it makes more sense if Majak is worried that this woman's ripping him off to the tune of like thousands and thousands of dollars. But even still, it's kind of insane to think that. But and like you said, if this kind of thing was for sale, that it would just be sitting on a table.
Yeah.
Like it would, because further down in my notes, I have, and there's a swear word in here, I won't say it, but why the actual bleep would you have items on the floor on tables that are worth $10,000? Because stealing aside, you turn around wrong, knock the thing off, and well, you break it, you bought it. Like,
yeah, I mean, you go into an electronics store and for a $100 handheld electronic device, they've got the thing wired to security.
Yeah.
It may be on display, but it's wired to a security system. So if somebody touches it, an alarm goes off.
You go into Shoppers Drug Mart these days. It's a shop, like a pharmacy chain here. And they've got the baby formula locked up.
Yeah, there's there's pharmacies or not pharmacies, but like corner drugstores that carry everything, including, your pharmaceuticals, that have pretty much even in Anchorage, entire aisles of products that you would just in some other store walk in and pick up off the shelf. They've got it behind glass cabinets and locked. So yeah.
So yeah, there's a few. I just think in terms of Laura being hired to do this, she should ask a few questions
red
about
flags.
this antique store, right? Because she watches this fake Majak with Kelton. And she says it's beautiful, asks how much it is. And he says $10,000, which, again, if this were really a store and this was really, it is really a 12th century temple figurine, but it would be worth far more than 10 grand. But,
well,
yeah. So Laura interrupts and asks if he can come over and tell her something about the figure she is pretending to look at. He goes over to Laura and both watch as Kelton places the figurine in her bag and walks towards the door. And again, this is like one of those things where department stores have security tags on stuff that beeps as you walk out the door. You'd think you'd have, if you really had stuff like that in your store.
Yeah.
Maybe that kind of technology didn't exist in 85, but even still, there'd be something to.
Yeah, there would be something.
So she places the figurine in her bag. She walks towards the door. Fake Majak asks if there's anything else he can help her with. She smiles and says, "Not today," and walks out.
And notice what happens when she walks out. She opens the door, walks through it, and the door stays open. If this was really a legitimate business that had all these products on there that were worth all this money, and they were really conscious about security, they would have a self-closing mechanism on that thing. Yeah,
no, I agree. I would think that a store like this would be a by appointment only, frankly.
Well, I won't disagree. I won't disagree.
If you're selling items, I mean, putting aside the 12th century nonsense, but if you're selling items that are worth thousands of dollars and they're proper antiques and whatever else, it'd be like a bridal shop. You make an appointment, you buzz, you go in, it's a one-on-one situation. But you're right, the door doesn't even shut. So hey,
security, it's job 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's on the list somewhere.
It's legit. Yeah, just trust us. So Laura grabs her purse as soon as she leaves and goes to pursue her. The fake Majak tells her not to lose her, and Laura says, "Don't worry." Outside, we see Mrs. Kelton walk towards her car. Laura does the same, and as she drives off, Laura follows. We see Mrs. Kelton driving down a few streets until eventually she goes into a parking garage where Laura follows her in. So we get a scene change, and we're inside Grace Kelton's apartment, or what we think is Grace Kelton's apartment. She opens the door, and they do this quite a bit. I've noticed that this is a plot line that gets recycled, right? Laura goes, or Steele goes to a place that he or she thinks belongs to this character they've met. And then they go back there and find, oh no, they've been out of town for a few months and they were just using this as a staging area. My God, there's a lot of space just sitting around for con artists to.
That's right. I mean, they've probably got this professional directory somewhere where they say, okay, we need an apartment upscale in this neighborhood that's not occupied at the moment. What have you got available?
You know, it's funny because in modern day, that would be an app. There'd be an app. You'd be like, vacant houses for crime. Quick.
It's the Airbnb for criminals.
Exactly. Airbnb for criminals. The app that gets stuff done.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to beat that horse.
Oh, yeah. That horse is dead and buried. We're still hitting it.
That's right.
So Grace Kelton opens the door to see Laura standing behind it. She identifies herself and asks if she can come inside. She goes in, and we get a short time jump. Obviously, Grace Kelton has admitted to stealing the artifact, but she tries to pretend it was an accident, claiming she has no idea how it got into her bag. Laura does not buy it. She pulls out a list of items that have been stolen in the past few months from the store and tells Grace that she's the prime suspect. Have you ever gone into a store and had something just fall into your bag? Well, I guess not, because you probably don't carry a bag. It's a stupid question. Actually, that did happen to, not to me, but to my sister-in-law, because I've known her since I was 13, and we were shopping for prom stuff, and she must have turned and like knocked a shelf or something, because like a tiara of some sort or a hat, like a headband, fell into her bag. We did not notice it. We get to the food court and we're going to get ourselves something to eat. She pulls it out of her bag and her face went white. And she was just like, I don't know how this got in there. I've never seen this before. And we looked at the tag and realized it was from that store. And she was like, how the hell do I return this without getting arrested? And we're like, we just go back and try to explain it, right? And so we did. And
was it one of those bags that was big and wide open top?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
See,
that's why you don't.
And it was one of those shelves that like earrings and stuff. It was just like on a hook, right? So she turned around and must have knocked it. So we go in and she's like, "This is going to sound really stupid, and I realize you might not believe me, but this was in my bag and I didn't take it, and I just wanted to give it back." They were thankfully really good about it because it was like a $10 item. There'd be no reason to return it if she'd really done it on purpose. So but something like what Grace has, not so much. She wouldn't be able to.
What you said, Laura pulls out the list and says, these are all the items that were taken, and that Grace Kelton is the prime suspect. And her response, it's just like one of those. She says, "Well, you make it sound like I'm a thief or something." It's like, well, yeah. I mean,
that's kind of where
I only took the stuff without paying for it. That's not the same thing as stealing it. It is. No, it's a different word. It's the same kind of reasoning that some people use. It's just like, well, if I don't use the word, but I use the definition, then I haven't really said the word,
Yeah, well, I mean, it's all a setup, right? So she's playing this sort of hapless, foolish woman that's like, she wants to lead Laura to the place of, this is someone who can't help herself. She's an addict or whatever you want to call it. But because then, of course, Laura says, she tells Laura to look around and see if she can find the stolen items. And as she does this, she deliberately makes her way over to a cabinet and stands in front of it. which of course Laura takes note of and suggests she start there. Grace immediately says no, tries to cover, asking why would I steal a bunch of antiques and leave them in a cabinet? And she points out it would be more logical to sell them or at least display them. I don't know about displaying them, frankly, if you've stolen them, but...
Well, I mean, if you figure that nobody's going to be in there that would know and notice, you might get away with it. But yeah, I mean, we all hear about, and it's a favorite plot device, the criminal who steals stuff, and they have this special room where they display it, where they go in and they just sit there and enjoy it. Yeah.
I mean, Thomas Crown Affair.
Yeah.
Right. But I honestly I wouldn't understand the appeal for me, like personally. If I, not that I'm going to steal anything, but like if I have something that I like, that I want to look at, I'm going to want it to be something that everybody else sees when they come in too. Not because I want to show it off necessarily, but because it seems sort of pointless to have something of value and hide it away.
Yeah. I mean, it's I've got T-shirts that I have bought at various times in the past, bands. I had a Rick Nelson T-shirt that I got at one of his shows that I just loved, and I wore it and I wore it and I wore it and I wore it out. And it's one of those things where I really regret having worn it out because now I don't have it anymore. But what was the point in having it if I wasn't going to wear it?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's to use the line from the movie His Girl Friday, it was made for purpose.
Yeah. There's
a purpose for it. And if it's not being used for that purpose, then why was it made? Well, it was made to do this thing. So you got to do that thing with it. So, yeah.
Precisely. So, yeah. But again, it's all set up, right? So she tries to make this weak argument. And of course, Laura is not moved. She has to look in the cabinet. And then with sort of feigned resignation, Grace sits down. Laura opens it, and of course, all the stolen items are there.
Sure.
Grace apologizes and admits she's not even sure why she does it, but she just can't help herself. She begs Laura not to tell Whit, but Laura says she has to. So, and it's interesting because I noted that, was it Dice Steele? There was, I think it was Dice Steele, where we get like 10 minutes or so of an intro before we even see Laura. Now we're getting the opposite here, this whole beginning part. And it's odd to me because there doesn't seem any narrative reason not to have him there.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you were doing the sting operation, you could have him in there pretending to be a customer.
Unless...
second set of eyes, or waiting outside the store for when she leaves, or something like it. I don't know.
Unless it's just to make it... to create a situation where it's less likely that questions would be raised. Because if you've got two people there working on it, even if one person, no red flag goes up for it, for the other person, they might say, hey, wait a second, something about this isn't right. And prompt the other person into reconsidering the situation. That's the only reason I can think of. Or it was just simpler to write it with just one person.
Maybe. But I don't know. It just seems odd that there are certain episodes where it makes sense. One of them is approached, the other one's not around, or they're asked not to tell the other person, which almost never ends well. But in this case, we just don't even see that he knows about this case, which is kind of interesting. So, yeah. Then we get a scene change, a beautiful, huge home, and Laura is introducing herself to Whit Sterling. So obviously this was the person that Grace was referring to. She apologizes for interrupting his dinner. He tells her not to worry, that he was oozing so much charm in there, his shirts were getting damp. It's a cute line. I like that. Laura sits down and tells him that she has unpleasant news. She tells him that Grace Kelton is a kleptomaniac. Whit doesn't react at all, not even recognizing the name. He simply says, I'm sure her mother would be very disappointed.
Well, I mean, she probably would be. Yeah.
And I mean, I looked it up because I know from Hollywood and television what kleptomania is. And just because I was curious. According to the Mayo Clinic, it is a mental health disorder that involves repeatedly being unable to resist urges to steal items that you generally don't need. Often the items stolen have little value and you can afford to buy them. So that obviously does not fit what Grace is doing if she's stealing things that are $10,000 or more. It also says kleptomania is rare, but can be a serious condition. It can cause emotional pain to you and your loved ones, and even legal problems if not treated. Really?
Oh, wow.
Stealing can lead to legal problems.
Who would have thought? I mean, I don't know if I would really trust the Mayo Clinic on that. What does Wikipedia say?
There was a number of things. They all pretty much said the same thing, right? This was just the first one that I came across, but I did look into others. And what I do like the fact that there's symptoms, right? Symptoms include inability to resist powerful urges to steal items you don't need, feeling increased tension, anxiety, or arousal leading up to the theft, feeling pleasure, relief, or satisfaction when stealing, terrible guilt, remorse, self-loathing, shame, or fear of arrest after the theft, and then return of the urges. So,
well, at least those symptoms and side effects are a lot more palatable than some of the side effects that they talk about on TV with the medications. It's like, first of all, they say, don't use this medication if you're allergic to it. Well, how do I know I'm allergic to it if I've never used it before?
Right.
And particularly when you consider that the side effects are, it might kill you. It might, infirm you for life. It's like, okay, so do I really, and the list of side effects is so long.
Oh, yeah.
It's half the commercial.
And they rattle them off so quickly that you're just like, wait, did he just say spontaneous explosion and death? What?
That's right.
What?
Yeah. But other than that, it's hey, if it doesn't kill you, it'll cure you.
Yeah,
We're just not sure which.
It's a toss-up. Could go either way. So yeah, I just thought this was interesting because it also says that unlike most shoplifters, people with kleptomania don't compulsively steal for personal gain on a dare for revenge or out of rebellion. They steal simply because the urge is so powerful they can't resist it. They generally happen suddenly without planning and without help from another person. And most people with kleptomania steal from public places such as stores. Some may steal from friends or acquaintances, but most of the time it's stores. And they often steal items that have no value to the person with kleptomania, and the person can afford to buy one. They usually stash them away, never to be used, or donate them or give them away to family and friends. So if you start getting gifts from a loved one that, seem kind of odd, like, why am I getting this whisk? Why did you buy me a whisk? Maybe look into that. Just saying.
Yeah. Just saying.
Anyway, I just thought that was interesting, and I went down that little detour because I'm sure her mother would be very disappointed.
Yes.
Laura continues undeterred, saying that she has stolen over $50,000 from her client. She says she's recovered most of the items, but Whit interrupts her before she can continue, telling her that he doesn't have any idea what she's talking about. He says he's never heard of Grace Kelton and asks, "Who is she to me?" Laura calmly says, "Your mistress." Whit laughs, insisting that she doesn't know how funny that is and that he's a happily married man. And of course, what we find out about Whit later on is, that's true because he is having difficulties with his wife, right? So he's not about to get a mistress. But of course, Laura doesn't know that. She's unimpressed. She takes the briefcase and opens it, revealing the items that she's recovered. Right? She tells him these are the ones that they have found and that they've been very discreet. There have been no police involvement. Laura's client has assured them that there won't be if he can make restitution for the missing items. So, yeah. And of course, this has the effect that is intended. Of course, Laura doesn't know that because she's being used. Whit's eyes focus on one of the figurines. He picks it up, asks where she got this. She says she told him. Then he says, "Your client asked you to do this?" Laura says yes, and he says that he understands and that he is the poorest sport in the world. And as soon as he can find a way to cover his butt, he will pay because he doesn't like being blackmailed. Laura is kind of shocked. She's taken aback by just like how visibly angry he seems and is not aware that she was blackmailing him. She doesn't know what to do. He tells her to leave before he does something he will regret. She grabs the briefcase. He tries to stop her and tells her to leave it. But it's at that moment his wife enters, and she's obviously a little worried about the exchange. So Laura takes the opportunity to grab the briefcase and head towards the door. Whit tells his wife their surprise guest was just leaving. So we've got this little beginning obviously tells us something's not right about this case. There's something going on that is a bit more than what Laura thinks. So we go back to Majak's Antiques, where fake Majak is still there. She's shown in the briefcase. He's looking through the items. Laura says she checked off the ones that Grace admitted to taking. Majak asks about Mr. Sterling and how he took it. Laura says bad and he asks what he said exactly. Laura's a little cagey with him and just says that he said he would get even, which he didn't really, but Majak smiles to himself and says, impetuous man, our Mr. Sterling. He hands Laura an envelope. She looks in it, surprised to find her payment in cash. Would that be that unusual in 1985?
I would think so. I would think so. I would think that should be raising red flags all over the place, sounding alarms and warning bells going off, because no, that's not generally how that would be done.
Most of their clients then would probably pay by check?
Check or some other documented payment system,
right.
They would say, give me 30-day terms. You'd send them a bill. They would send you a payment either as a check or a credit card payment or a bank transfer type transaction, something that could actually be documented. When somebody's doing this kind of a business and they're dealing in cash, that's the government frowns on that sort of thing. They get this idea that maybe you're doing something suspicious. So yeah, if you're in business and you're doing strictly a cash business at this level, if you're running a taco stand, that's different. But at this level, yeah, that raises too many red flags for too many people. And yeah.
Fair enough. I mean, it's not like there haven't been other red flags so far.
Well, no.
So she is surprised, though, and he tells her it's for a discreet handling of a delicate matter and thanks her. She hesitates for a minute, and we get another time jump. She's in bed, and her phone is ringing. She picks it up, and Mrs. Sterling...
So she just went, oh, this is weird. I think I'll go home and go to bed.
Well, I imagine she went back to the office and finished her day's work and did whatever paper. This is why I'm wondering where Mr. Steele is, because you would think, because he seems to have no knowledge of this case whatsoever when she finally does bring him in. You'd think he'd at least be at the office. She'd return and say, I got the money, whatever.
But I'm thinking that given the things that have happened up to this point, that should be, even if she doesn't fully recognize that something is wrong, there should be at least something niggling at her brain. Yeah. And I would think she would say, I maybe I need to spend a little time looking into this. But no, it's, I think I'm going to go home and have a drink and watch some TV and go to bed.
Maybe she's watching Atomic Man.
Yes.
So anyway, the phone rings. She picks it up. Mrs. Sterling is on the other end, and she's upset. She asks what Laura said to her husband the night before. Laura can barely register things when she adds that Whit is dead because of her. Yikes. So then we have, and again, no Mr. Steele.
Mm-hmm.
Like, where is he?
Yeah.
Like at this point, you would think he'd be there.
Well, you'd think that at some point we would see him and there would be some communication between the two of them. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
even if she had a reason for not involving him or he was unavailable. Yeah. And later on when he does get involved, it's, as you say, it's obvious that he had no clue what was going on.
Yeah.
So therefore there was absolutely no communication between the two of them on this. And it's like, yeah, what's wrong with this picture?
Because, I mean, like you said, if she had hung up the phone with Mrs. Sterling and then maybe picked up the phone and called Steele and said, hey, that was Mrs. Sterling. She just called. Apparently Whit is dead. No, don't come. I'll handle it. Click.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Then at least it would look as if he's in the loop. But we just get a scene change and she's at the Sterling's home and she's by herself. So it's kind of odd that he's just nowhere to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
She defends herself, saying that all she knows is that she told Whit exactly what she just told her. She's speaking to Mrs. Sterling. She insists that he was upset about what she had said, but hardly suicidal. His wife insists that she had a perfect life until she introduced herself last night. She adds that her husband never had a mistress and attacks Laura, calling her a liar. A man intervenes, telling her to go upstairs and get some rest, saying the doctor will be there soon. He says he'll finish up with Miss Holt. She shoots daggers at Laura, then tells her she will never forgive her. The man apologizes, saying that she's upset and that they had to break the door down. Laura is still upset, saying she can't believe she was responsible. The man she's speaking to insists that she's not, saying the only one with blood on his hands is Whit. Or sorry, she's not responsible, right? Yeah.
Right.
So Laura addresses the man whose name is Mr. Bigelow, and all I can hear, the rest of my notes, I had to resist the urge to write Deuce Bigelow because of that stupid movie. It's a terrible movie. Rob Reiner movie called Deuce Bigelow, Male Gigolo.
Okay. Never heard of it. Never heard of it.
You're better off. It really isn't a good film, but because of the name Deuce Bigelow, Male Gigolo, every time they mention Mr. Bigelow's name, that's what I heard in my head. So
okay.
It's unfortunate, but there we are. So yeah. That's his name, for better or for worse. And she says to him that you've known him the longest. Did you know if he had a mistress? Mr. Bigelow said, with all due respect, now is not the time, which makes Laura angry. She counters by saying she's just been accused of driving a man to suicide and she has the right to ask a few questions. Bigelow relents and said that as far as he knew, Whit and Claudia had a perfect marriage. Laura was not expecting that response, but she counters by asking about his relationship to Leopold Majak. Bigelow claims he doesn't know who that is. Laura is surprised, asking if his company does business with Majak Antiques. Nobody has said what Sterling's company is at this point, which...
It's a company that gets things done.
Yeah. I kind of think that that's interesting because you would think that at some point they'd slip it into the script. Like she could say, your business does imports. Are you sure you've never heard of Bigelow or Bigelow? See, it's in my head. Bigelow.
Bigelow Tea.
Yeah. Majak Antiques. It just feels weird.
No, we kind of find out later what business they're in, but it would make more sense to have introduced it prior to this so that we have in our mind that, there is a reason for these two businesses to have a relationship.
Yeah, because an antique store is an odd one to begin with, right? So what kind of relationship would you have with an antique store? Unless it is, of course, importing or procuring. I don't know. But yeah, Bigelow says he's not aware of it. And just then a man enters who introduces himself as Dr. Romson, who asks where she is. Bigelow tells him she's upstairs and then he sent her back to bed. Romson asks what she was doing downstairs in the first place, as she's supposed to stay in bed. Bigelow ruefully says that that's easier said than done, and Romson says he realizes Whit's death was a tragedy, but she still has the baby to think of. And if she keeps this up, she will lose it. Oof. You gotta feel bad for Laura here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is just piling it on, right? The guilt compounding, like the idea that she might be responsible for a man killing himself, a woman who no longer has her husband, and now potentially a baby that may never know his father or her father.
Well, or worse, that the stress from the situation might cause her to lose the child.
Yeah, that too. Like, it's all, and you can see it on her face. Like, she's devastated. She doesn't want to be responsible because that would be just, like you said, the fact that she could now even lose the baby. Bigelow confirms that she's 3 months along with their first child and adds that she's not young and there might not be more opportunities. They were both excited about it. Oof. Ouch.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So then we've got another scene change, and the rabbit, we see it parked on the street outside the shop. Steele is finally there. Yay.
Yeah.
And I got a couple of things
to
say about his behavior in this episode. Because this episode is very similar to, and the name of it is escaping me, but the first episode that we get Major Descoing.
Mm-hmm.
Steel framed, that's it. This episode is very similar in the sense that Laura, in Steele Framed, Steele is lured out to a spot and then set up, right? And all of the signs point to his guilt throughout the entire episode, to the point where even he kind of expects Laura to lose faith in him or to, abandon him, right? And he tries to do the same to spare her. And she doesn't. She sticks with him every step of the way. She supports him, even when he thinks that he's killed a man. And he drops the ball here monumentally because it's not the same situation, but similar in the sense that she's on this case. She's set up. She doesn't know she was set up yet, obviously, but she thinks that she's responsible for a man's death, however indirectly. And rather than, I get that he doesn't think that it's actually a murder, that he believes that it's suicide and that she's barking up the wrong tree, but he's not very delicate about it. He's very blunt and not sympathetic at all to how she might be feeling if it is in fact a suicide. Like, he just kind of rolls over her feelings in this episode, and I'm kind of like, dude, she was there for you in similar circumstances.
Yeah. And later on, there's a scene where they're breaking in and Laura's picking a lock, and his attitude is it's dismissive.
Yeah, very, very. Yeah. Like, so I'm putting a pin in that because when we get there, I'm sure we'll identify it, but it feels, also, he's wearing that hideous leather suit jacket. Please, somebody burn it. Someone just find it and burn it. Kill it with fire. I hate this thing.
Yeah, it's not very appealing, that's for sure.
Is it like, because here's the thing, a suit jacket is not outerwear. It's part of the whole outfit, right? Like, you wear a coat. If you're going somewhere where it's cold, that's not your coat. You have a coat that goes over top of that.
Yeah.
The leather suit jacket looks like a coat, but it's not a coat. It's part of the outfit. It's, pick one. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Stop. This is the third time we've seen it. I'm counting. Make it go away. Anyway. Put it in the same bin that Laura's weird pink shirt thing with the turtleneck that Dr. Pepper or Sergeant Pepper and the Lonely Hearts Club Band looking shirt that she had on. Put it in the same bin, set it on fire. I don't know. Just get rid of it. Anyway. So yeah, they're together.
Yeah, finally. Yay!
He expresses annoyance that she didn't bring him in on this initially. Yeah, because didn't she tell him they don't do these things separately and have I got to steal for you?
Yeah, something like that.
Wasn't that the whole lie? It seems like only when the plot demands it does that become the rule.
Well, I mean, she does kind of sort of have, I don't know if I would say a reason. Maybe it's more of an excuse than a reason. She does say she thought it was just a routine tale and that he's hardly one to relish routine. And so her response there is not really, it's almost one of those things where I've got to come up with an excuse that sounds good. So I'll throw this one out. Of course, and his response back to her is not exactly sympathetic, because his response is, did you just do it to prove you could do it without me?
Yeah, like, it's a weird, because I would think, as you said, it's just routine. I would think that trying to catch a thief that is theoretically stealing items worth tens of thousands of dollars is not routine. Well, maybe I guess it is for them, but like, and then, as you said, maybe you just wanted to prove he knows that she can do it without him. Mm-hmm. And she knows that he could do, like, that he's able to do. This is season 1 stuff. This is not season 3 stuff. They've had this fight, and they know the other person is competent enough to handle this on their own. And carrying this conversation forward,
Laura says, well, I don't have to prove anything to you. And Steele says, well, of course not, at least not to me. And as far as I'm concerned, you're the perfect subordinate. Again, back to season 1, dismissed his overplaying the role. But it's also, again, has that tone here in the 3rd season of being somewhat dismissive of her.
It's almost mean-spirited because it's funny when they're around people that don't know, because then it's kind of like ribbing and teasing, but also like there's plausible deniability, like, oh, I have to play the part, Laura. The client was in front of us, womp womp. But this is more,
it's personal.
Yeah, it's personal. It's not very nice. She knows that she's not as subordinate, and so does he. And it's getting old. That's all I'm saying. Laura rings the bell and they walk inside, and we've got a different Majak, the real Majak, behind the counter. Laura asks to see Leopold Majak. Man says, okay. Laura waits. When nothing happens, she says, well, the man says he is Leopold Majak. Laura's confused. Steele asks if there are any other Leopold Majaks connected with this. Right, because that's such an ordinary name.
Yeah. Well, Leopold Majak the first, Leopold Majak the second,
right? Like that's a weird name. So I don't think there's going to be more than one associated with this company, but okay.
Yeah, you never know. But
the man says, of course not, sounding annoyed. And Laura is even more confused than ever. She says that Leopold Majak hired her. Majak interrupts her and says, I am Leopold Majak. So this is funny. Laura regroups and tells him that a man claiming to be Leopold Majak hired her to stake out the store and help stop a kleptomaniac. The real Majak is shocked and somewhat disbelieving. Probably like you, because he's probably wondering, how the heck did they get in here? Without me knowing. Laura says that yesterday that she was there. She watched a woman steal some items and followed her, returning with the stolen items. Majak suggests that perhaps she had the wrong store, but Laura is adamant she was there. He says it's impossible. And this is the thing. It's not like he was away for a week. It was one day.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, that's impossible. We're never open Mondays.
And so you can kind of understand it from his perspective. I mean, here's this woman. She comes in making these wild claims, and she's got to be insane. Excuse me, mister, are you her keeper, her psychiatric analyst or something? Because she's nuts.
Yeah. It definitely doesn't sound like she's living in the realm of the sane. That's for sure. Because Steele repeats never, and he firmly says never. So, yeah. And then and I think it's interesting. We've got this Grace Kelton, this blonde sort of like, she's definitely meant to be Grace Kelly from To Catch a Thief, right? They're not meant to be, but they're supposed to be like visual associations. I would assume they've named her Grace, and she's blonde, and I don't know. And Kelton with a K. It just seems like they were at least looking for the connection, if not, maybe not directly, but I'm guessing that was kind of like an homage. So we go back to the apartment. Laura knocks on the door. When nobody answers, she pulls out her lockpick kit, of course, and asks Steele if he wants to do the honors. It's so nice. This is like, you know how we talked about whether or not, a guy should pull out a chair or whatnot. This seems more like chivalry with Laura and Steele. Like, oh, would you like to do it this time? No, you go right ahead and pick the lock. I'll just watch.
The Chipmunks. or the no, not Tom and Jerry, but Chip and Dale. Oh, no. After you. Oh, after you. No, after you. Exactly. I insist.
Precisely. That seems more their speed. So still a bit annoyed at not being included earlier, he sarcastically tells her it's her case and Carrie. He seems more petty about the fact that she didn't call him than about the fact that, I mean, he can see now something's not right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, oh, no. This is your case. Carry on. Yeah. It's just like, come on, grow up.
Yeah, because I mean, even if, and I'm not saying he didn't have a legitimate reason to be annoyed that she didn't call him, because every time he goes off and does something on his own, she does the whole, we don't pursue cases on our own. That's not how we work.
Yeah, but
she reads him that
in fairness, she doesn't really necessarily mean we always work together. as much as you don't work without me. She doesn't say it that way. That's what, but that's really what she means. And so you can, I mean, it's her agency. She's in charge. She's the actual detective. I mean, yes, he's coming along. He's doing pretty well, but you know, she's still in charge, and she needs to keep rein on him. And so what she's really trying to convey to him, doing a very bad job of it, but what she's trying to convey is, you don't go off without me. If you want to work on something, we work on it together. That doesn't necessarily mean that she doesn't go out and do something on her own. But
well, yeah. I mean, in Have I Got a Steele for You, that was when she said that to him. It was right after he was beaten to a bloody pulp by the loan shark, was it? Was it the loan? Yeah, the loan shark, the one that was after Mulch, right?
Okay, yeah.
And so in her, like, her reasoning was that they're safer together, both of them.
Yeah.
And I get what you're saying. She has it's her agency. She can bench him if she wants, but to set a rule, i.e. we work together, and then to break her own rule, and then I get why he's annoyed, but at the same time, he's walked into this situation. He can see the Majak. There's something going on here. He knows Laura well enough to know that she wouldn't just make up having gone to the store and meeting with her. He has to know something's not right. And yet
at least have a little bit of sympathy here rather than acting like a little petulant child and saying,
yeah, he's being a bit of a brat.
You didn't invite me in, so you just do all the hard work yourself. I'm just here to advise and consult, because remember, that's my job.
Yeah,
I work best behind the scenes.
Yeah, he's being a bit of a brat here, and it's considering what she's feeling she might be responsible for, it's not okay.
Yeah.
So she opens the door, and inside the apartment we see it's empty. And the typical, there's sheets covering all the furniture. It looks as nobody has lived there for a while. The usual Steele comments on how
dust covers everything, spider webs hanging from the
yeah. She's not much of a housekeeper. Laura approaches the cabinet, only like you said, this time it's covered in dust. A little over covered, if you ask me. It looks like it's been there for 100 years, but okay. Yeah. And she tells him that the antiques were in this cabinet. We see someone enter the apartment. Just as they round the corner, a police officer pulls a gun and tells him not to move, adding that he's new on the job and just as scared as them. I'm not a cop.
He's not a cop either. He's a security officer.
Okay, but either way.
Private security. He's a rent-a-cop. He's one step above a mall cop.
This is not the thing you say to a potential home invader.
Yeah. But, at the same time, armed security should be a little bit higher in their standards and their training. And if he's that new on that kind of a job, he would have somebody he's working with teaching him the ropes until he's comfortable and experienced enough to do it on his own. So, yeah.
Yeah. Because he's basically just admitted, I could shoot you randomly, or like
yeah.
Don't move. I'm scared. I don't know. So Laura goes to reach for her ID. The man tells her not to do it. Steele explains that they are private investigators. Laura is his associate. She's just trying to show him her ID. She does, and I had cop, but I'll say security guard, asks what they're doing here. Laura tells him that she was there yesterday to see Grace Kelton. The security guard asks who that is, and Laura clarifies that it's her apartment. He says no, the apartment belongs to the Diazes, who are in the Philippines, and that no Grace Kelton has ever lived here.
And to reinforce your comment about the condition of the apartment, they've been in the Philippines for 3 weeks.
Yeah,
that's a lot more than 3 weeks worth of dust and such.
Way more than 3 weeks. Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna go. Okay, so I'm gonna admit that I do not have the closest relationship with my duster. In fact, I can't remember the last time I dusted anything, and yet.
We have no relationship with the duster.
There you go. Okay, so occasionally my husband dusts. He gets to the point where he's annoyed, and then he'll go and but I don't, and it's certainly not like an inch thick's worth of dust on the. I gotta wonder if they just went in behind Laura after she left and poured, like, I don't know, baking powder or something, like flour.
Oh, I wonder if you can get that dust in a can. You can get dust off in a can. It's compressed air.
Yeah.
But I wonder if, for like set dressings, and this would be fantastic for con artists.
True. Yeah.
You get something in a spray can, you rattle it, and the ball goes, and then you just go around spraying it up in the air, and it just goes up in the air, and then it just kind of drifts down, and it covers everything, and it looks like dust.
Well, that's a good question for if we ever get a chance to chat with anybody who has worked on this show. It would be a good question.
That would be a good question.
How they manage to make things look dusty when they are clearly not dust covered. So yeah, I'll put a pin in that too. So
I don't know why, but
no. Back at the office, Steele is doing his best to win the most insufferable award. Because sorry, I'm just annoyed with him in this episode. Here's the thing, I like this episode. I just the beginning part where he's just acting this way. It just because he
but says, I know what you're talking about here. If what you say is true, I'm sorry. You don't believe that she interacted with somebody inside that store, or that she was in that apartment? Come on, dude. You've seen this happen. It has happened to you. Yeah.
Like when he thought he had killed a man and all the evidence was stacked up against him, she believed him. Mm-hmm. It's crappy of him not to do the same.
Well, and they had the same situation, kind of. I mean, as far as the apartment back in season 1. The final episode, name escapes me at the moment. But the guy at the Federal Reserve Bank with the money and the girlfriend.
Steele in circulation. Yeah.
Yes, there we go. Same thing.
Yes.
I was in this apartment. No, it doesn't look like it.
Yeah, exactly. This has happened before. It's not like it's that out of the I'm gonna take
your frustration is causing you to lose your sense of speech.
Yeah, which is impressive because that's not usually. Well, I lost my sense of speech 2 weeks ago too. So.
But that was a physical issue, not a psychological, emotional, and.
But he does, like he says, they've all had their shoulders to the wheel. Her more than most, obviously, and then. This is even worse because he's using this for his own gain. And once again, this trend of now they're in the thaw, so he's going to try to get her to go somewhere where he can manufacture a romantic situation. And normally that's cutesy, but here it's just kind of awful because he's using it for his own pleasure. He suggests they could all use some R&R. Mildred heartily agrees to it. Laura, she's angry. She stands up and she points out that she is a client who doesn't exist, a kleptomaniac who's disappeared. A man supposedly killed himself because of her, and he's prescribing a vacation?
This is almost as if she should be at this point saying, did you set this up, Steele? Is this all a fake case to lure me somewhere? Foreshadowing.
Because Lord knows he would never manufacture a case just to get her into a romantic situation. That would be crazy.
That would be crazy, yes.
Only a total psycho would do that.
Yeah.
Steele trying.
Stay tuned.
Anyway, so coming to an episode near you. But like this theme after the thaw, I get it sets up that the cracks are still there, I guess, for the finale, because the finale, and jumping ahead of myself, but the finale only works if we still see there are some issues that haven't been worked out. And as you pointed out in one of the previous episodes, he's trying to speed it up. They've been apart for months, and rather than gradually allowing themselves to figure out what they mean to each other after that separation, he's trying to jump back in and be like, okay, back where we are, we're just going to fast forward this.
Yeah, we're going to pretend like none of this has happened.
It doesn't work that way. Especially it doesn't work that way when she's having a crisis and he's saying, no, when in doubt, relax.
Well, I just had something flash through my head. His attitude here is a bit like that condescending grandmother where the kid runs in, something happened, something traumatic happened. And, oh, there, dear. It's okay. Just calm down.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. He's patronizing. And I love his sort of cheeky side where he drives her crazy and pokes the bear. That's a lot of fun. It's not
when it's
fun
appropriate.
when it's appropriate. It's not fun when you see that the other person is genuinely in distress and you're bulldozing over their feelings because you want something. That's not fun.
I mean, even if it was a situation where somebody was distressed about something that didn't actually happen, like a dream or they misinterpreted something, you don't dismiss how they're responding to that thing, even though the thing that they're responding to is false. You try to explain, you try to show them a little bit of sympathy, say, I understand you're upset, but let's look at this rationally. Let's look at the details. Let's look at the facts, because you're reacting to something that isn't what you think it is. But you don't just say, hey, let's pull out the sideshow and go do a dance, can, and go take a vacation because no.
And again, it's not like with the Atomic Man episode where she was randomly going off on a tangent and had no reason to believe Max was innocent beyond her own childhood association with the show. He's seen firsthand something's not right.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's suicide at this point is kind of irrelevant in the sense that Laura is into something that clearly is using her in some way.
Yeah.
So at least he could go along with that part, even if
there are clearly things that need to be investigated and explained.
Yes. Yeah.
And those things are causing her distress. So let's deal with the situation seriously because she is in distress. So you deal with the situation. And then afterwards, if it turns out to be one of those things where, okay, you got everything wrong, then you can laugh about it after the fact.
The irony
together.
The irony is if he were behaving supportively and being there for her emotionally and saying, let's figure this out. I'm here for you. After the case is over, she might have gone with him to Fiji.
Yeah, that's true.
They almost went to Catalina in Steele and the Family. Like she has shown a willingness to want to go to these places with him. There's an upcoming episode where they almost go skiing. So,
but you're not going to get that if you've been dismissive and
exactly. He could have put in the work and then gotten the reward.
Gotten the goodies.
No. Yeah, exactly. No, he doesn't. Laura goes to leave. Mildred asks where she's going, and Laura says to change clothes as they have to make a house call this evening. Steele tells Mildred this is a priority situation and they might have to do some information gathering themselves. Mildred gets all excited asking where to start, and Steele goes to leave and then, of course, tells her to check all flight and accommodations to Rio de Janeiro, Cabo San Lucas, Hawaii, and the Fiji Islands.
Yeah.
Dude. Okay.
If somebody paid my way to some of those places, I might go, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just weird. Those are not the first places I would think of if somebody said, do you want to go someplace special for a vacation? Those are not places that would be on my list. So.
Well, I mean, I can understand why they're on his list.
Well,
they're all tropical, hot weather. He's hoping she's going to pull out that red bikini. That's what he.
Okay. Okay.
That's where he's
point taken.
Yeah, there you go.
Point taken.
He doesn't want to take her. Well, I guess they do almost go skiing. Skiing involves layers, but what kind of kills me is the Rio de Janeiro. The others are all semi close by, right? Mexico, Hawaii, Fiji, but Brazil. That's not close by. That's quite a ways away.
So. Oh, I just had a flash. Oh. A Michael Frank song, Popsicle Toes.
Popsicle Toes?
Yes.
I don't know this song.
The lyrics are, see, You've got the nicest North America this sailor ever saw. I'd like to feel your warm Brazil and touch your Panama. Your Tierra del Fuegos are nearly always froze.
I need to look this song up. That's hilarious.
It was a hit back in the 70s.
I bet it was. That's funny. That is really funny. All right, I'm looking that up. Not right now, but later. So we go back to Whit Sterling's mansion. Laura and Steele are in their crime clothes with flashlights. She starts to search the room, telling Steele to start looking. He asks for what, and she answers proof that he was murdered. Steele asks how they got to murder. And Laura says, well, if he didn't kill himself and he didn't die of natural causes, it's the only logical conclusion.
You can't argue with the statement.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's built on a pretty shaky premise.
It's built on her guilt. She doesn't want to be responsible. That's all she's got right now. She's literally got no reason to think that it was anything other than suicide. Beyond, right. I don't want it to be a suicide, which you can understand. But again, Steele could have handled this better. Right? Because here's the thing. If he goes along with her to prove that it's murder and they cannot find a way to prove it's murder, absolutely, unequivocally cannot find it, then eventually she would have to accept that it's a suicide. So it's in his best interest to try to help her rather than to hinder her. At least help her to the point where they're not planting evidence or whatever. But yeah, instead he basically tells her, Laura, he sat down at this desk and put a bullet in his brain. She says, so it appears. He points out the door was locked from the inside. She says, suppose the murderer locked it from the outside and put the key in the lock of the inside keyhole with all the commotion. Steele points out that it locks from the inside only with a bolt, not a key. Laura asks, how hard would it be to lock it from the outside? Take off the hinges and rehang it.
Okay, that was a stupid question on Laura's part, because which direction do those doors open? They open into the room. The hinges would be on the inside of the door. So there's no way you could do that. I mean, it's a physical impossibility.
Well, he doesn't even say that. He points out that they're covered in paint and haven't been tampered with for years. So
yeah, well, but the question itself is
I know.
Yeah.
But it would have made more sense for him to point that out. Right? Instead, he actually looks and says, no, they've got paint on them. It's like, okay. But she's not deterred. She suggests there might be a hidden panel. Steele hopes it leads directly to Rio de Janeiro. Copacabana Beach, the girl from Ipanema. Like dude, just look with her, right? Just go with it as far as you can go. If you really don't think that she's right, then that'll come out. Yeah. But no, he does, to be fair, he tries to tell her here she's not responsible for his suicide. The fact that she came into contact with him the night he decided to do it is an unfortunate coincidence.
But his tone of voice when he says it.
Yeah. It definitely isn't as kind as it could be.
It's not reassuring. It's
frustrated.
It's and it's critical. It's criticismally critical.
Yes. Yeah.
Criticismally?
It works. I'll accept it. Survey says fine.
But I mean, he's being critical of her attitude and her feelings about the case.
Yeah.
As well as the fact that she is not thinking rationally and she's creating these fallacious chains of logic.
Especially since, again, and I don't want to keep harping back on Steele framed, but after he came back to his apartment and he sat down, he said, I've never killed a man before. I don't think I like the feeling. Granted, Laura's not thinking that she physically ran a man down, but she's feeling as if she killed this man. She's feeling as if she put him in a position where he felt the only way out was suicide. And she desperately doesn't want that to be the case.
Yeah, I mean, anybody with a conscience, which eliminates probably 25% of the world's population.
Yep.
You know, if you did something that you can draw a straight line from your actions to a person committing suicide, that is not something that is going to set well with a person of conscience. So it's yeah, his attitude here is just, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not good.
He tells her not to berate herself, and this is just as she finds the hidden safe. She asks him to do something about it, and he does, beaming as he opens it.
Oh, he is just he's like a kid who's just been handed a plate of cookies, and he says, "Can I have one?" They say, "No, you can have the whole plate."
So I'm sorry to do this, but I have to. There's a Buffy quote that just popped into my head.
Oh no. Okay, somebody out there, go back and review all the episodes. I'm not going to do it. Reveal, find out how many times there have been Buffy references in this podcast, and start keeping track of it.
Yeah, there needs to be it's a season 3 reference because there's somebody else giving Buffy orders that is not Giles, and she says, when Giles sends me on a mission, he usually says please, and then I get a cookie. Being sarcastic. So yeah, this is kind of how I feel with Steele opening the safe, like, where's my cookie? So yeah, he pulls out an antique figure that Laura says is just like the one stolen from Majak. They also find a Purple Heart and a service record that says he was a Korean War hero, which he must have gone into the war late in life, because am I doing the math wrong?
Well, the Korean War was in the 50s.
1950 to 53, but my grandfather was in Korea.
60, 70, 80,
and
so 30 years from, let's say, the middle of the war period to when this episode is done. So 30 years. So if he was 30, he would be 60 now. I didn't look at this guy's credits, so I'm going to guess he's probably 65 or 70. He could have been a guy who did 20 in the military, and that would put him into his 40s, early 40s. If he did 25, the mid 40s. So, he could have been, started in the military in the 30s before the Second War, and served through Korea, and then it could work.
Fair enough. The only reason I thought that was because my grandfather fought in Korea, and he died in 2010 at the age of 80. So I think he also lied about his age to fight in the war. So that might not be the best example. All right. But that makes her feel even worse because... Oh, yeah. Right? She says, great.
He survived the Korean War, but not me.
Yeah, that's got to feel awful. Steele also pulls out a slip of paper that says Marla Rakubian and has an address on it, 1479 Harbor. They hear a noise and hastily close the safe. And as they leave, Laura tells him that she will follow up on the figure and tells him to find out everything he can about Marla Rakubian, who at this point they think is a person. Steele tells her they should stick together, but she argues it will take twice as long, and they run the risk of losing him. Steele asks who. She says the murderer. Another noise can be heard, and a cat runs by, followed by 2 very large Dobermans. They chase both of them off the grounds. Steele and Laura manage to jump the wall, get into the car as the sprinklers turn on. Is it smart to park right outside the house you plan to burgle?
Generally not. I mean...
I'm no expert.
Well, they do have large fence and I guess it's ivy or whatever it is covering the fence. So, I mean, it would provide some level of protection from being seen from inside the house, but presumably there's going to be security or law enforcement passing by, maybe a neighbor out walking their dog late. And so, if somebody calls up and says, hey, our house has been broken into, the cops come out and investigate, they're going to ask neighbors, did you see anything? Oh, yeah, I saw this Volkswagen Rabbit out there. And it's all...
At least they didn't bring me over.
Well, that's,
It'd be even more conspicuous, right? But it just seems odd to park it right. Like, we're burgling this house, so we'll just park right here, right outside. It would make, I don't know, more sense to park a block down and then run. But I guess if they're being chased by Dobermans, they've got to put this in the plot, their escape. Yes. And of course, as they drive away, Steele asks her if she's ever been to the Fiji Islands. So got to get that last little in there. Yeah. So then we get a scene change. Laura walks into Majak's store, the real Majak, and clears her throat. He looks up at her, annoyed. And I love this line. I just love his delivery of it. I love just the whole. This actor is not in this episode all this much, but boy, does he make an impression, because he looks up at her and he says, "Would you please leave me alone? I am still Leopold Majak."
Sometimes a character or an actor gets a role that is not really intended to be a major character or significant character, and they just knock it out of the park. And in this case, it doesn't grow into anything further in this show. But I mean, there have been times in the past that Home Improvement, Richard Karn, he was in the first episode only because the actor that they had hired originally to play the role of Al, or that fill that role, the original character wasn't intended to be Al. He was unavailable, so they got Richard Karn in to do a fill-in for 1 or 2 episodes. And it comes along and Tim asks Al, "Hey, Al, you want to do this for me?" And what was supposed to be a throwaway line, he just takes it and turns it and makes it a killer line. I don't think so, Tim.
And that becomes this huge catchphrase.
And basically that one line got him the role permanently when the other actor became unavailable, because he just nailed it.
And kind of like when we spoke with Kay Callan, how she was saying that she interpreted Martha Kent for Lois and Clark as a woman who, doesn't sit around in her frilly little apron knitting. She's out there doing stuff, and she went to the audition in sweatpants, feeling this is Martha Kent. This is what she would do. And that turned that role into what was initially supposed to be just a couple of episodes into a full series role. Yeah. So, I mean, I agree.
You're right. This guy does an excellent job with the very limited material he's given. He just
exudes snobbery.
Oh, yes.
He exudes that I am a proprietor who runs an upscale antique store in LA. How dare you?
You're not even the classic
time.
You're not even the class of clientele that ordinarily I wouldn't even let you in here.
Yeah, exactly. That's his attitude. And she holds up the figurine and asks if he recognizes it, and he asks her, "Are you insane? Get that away from me." And she's surprised, asking why. What is it? He says 10 to 20. She's confused, and he clarifies that the temple figure is $250,000 if you can get it, which you can't because it's museum quality and can only be found in a museum in Beijing, which is exactly what I said at the beginning, that you would not have a figure like that out in the open.
That's right.
At least Majak knows. The real Majak.
Yeah.
Laura deduces that it was stolen, and he says, "Undoubtedly." And he says it in such a way that, as if she's a particularly stupid child.
Hello, Captain Obvious. Yes, it was stolen.
Exactly. No crap, Sherlock. What did we? Of course, it was stolen.
This episode has been edited for young ears. Exactly. Because we know that was not the phrase.
No, that is not the phrase. Majak says undoubtedly, but worse, it's major contraband. She could go to prison just for having it in her possession. He tells her that he hates to think what they would do to someone bringing it into the country, which that pings something in her brain, right? She tells him the figure Grace Kelton allegedly stole was just like this. Majak tells her that figure did not come from this store. And Laura, again, this is what I mean by this guy. I just adore him. She says, "I believe you." And he says, "Thank God, now I can die happy." This sarcasm just wafting off this man. He does not give a F about her problems. It's great. It's kind of fantastic.
Yeah.
He's awesome. I love him. We go back to Sterling's mansion. Laura approaches Deuce Bigelow, male gigolo. Mr. Bigelow. And Claudia Sterling sees her and asks what she's doing there. Laura tells Mr. Bigelow she needs to speak with him, and Claudia insists that he call the police. Laura, not being able to read the room, tells her that she thinks Whit was murdered. And here's where Laura's giant insensitivity button gets pushed, because, we find out later that Claudia is in on it, but if she wasn't, okay? If she were simply a grieving widow who just lost her husband and is pregnant with a high-risk pregnancy, Laura barging in there and he wasn't...
Hey, your husband got murdered!
Dude. Tact. Look it up.
Yeah. I mean, there's... The line, I think there's more to your husband's death than first appears.
Yeah.
That even might be a little bit too much, but it's certainly a lot better than hey, I think somebody knocked your husband.
Because Laura has already been told that she has a high-risk pregnancy and she's supposed to be resting. This is not the kind of shock that she needs.
No.
Right?
No,
like you don't want to do that. You just don't. So, but she does, because why not? Claudia says she can't take it, and she goes, what?
I just popped back over into my notes. Back a scene before with Leopold Majak. I just read what I wrote.
Oh, what did you write?
The real Leopold Majak is a bit of an asterisk.
Yes, he is. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Who cares not about her feelings or her problems?
Yeah, well, I of course, you got to see the way I spelled it, too.
I'm assuming... I
Two
think
S's?
I can guess. Yes.
Yeah.
I think I can guess.
Anyway, back to where we were. Laura's insensitivity.
Yeah, exactly. So she goes to call security, and Bigelow tells her he's going to handle it. Before he can say anything, though, a man comes up to him, seemingly insignificant moment, but of course it matters later on, with some boots that says, "Here are your boots, Mr. Bigelow. I cleaned them up real nice." Bigelow seems a bit uncomfortable and tells him to give them to Claudia, and she will take care of it. I know this is needed to serve the plot later on, but you can't wash your own boots.
No. I'm too important.
I am too important to wash my own things. Do this for me, surf. Yeah.
Well, on the other hand, and I don't mean to defend Bigelow because he's a jerk and a murderer, which we find out later, but
yes, yeah,
that's beside the point. The fact is, if you think about how much time especially if your boots are really, really muddy, how much time it takes to do them properly, if your time is worth $100 an hour, yeah, you probably hire somebody to do it at $15 an hour, because cost-wise, it's more effective for you to be spending your time doing something else, earning that $100 an hour, than spending your time doing a 20-hour, $15 an hour job. So
how murderers save money.
That's right. Yeah. Hey, we ought to write a book. How to commit crime on a budget.
Yeah. Step 1, buy your crime clothes at the thrift store.
That's right.
Yeah. So yeah, the boots are washed. He tells them to give them to Claudia, and he's denying any knowledge that Whit was smuggling. Laura says that she finds that hard to believe, as they were partners. But Bigelow says that was a name only. Whit had all the contacts, he did all the importing, and Bigelow did all the selling. He tells her that Whit needed someone who could endure endless lunches at the Polo Lounge and still look great in a 3-piece suit. Wow, that sounds tough. That sounds tough.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's a difficult life. I wouldn't. Oh, man. I'll sign up. If it's too hard for him. Like, I'll do it.
In all fairness, though, if you think about some of the people you would have to interact with and the banality of their conversations and their just absolute, it could be a tough job to do. It really could. I mean, I couldn't do it. I would probably wind up punching somebody in the mouth or saying something sarcastic.
I just order a lot of booze.
Yeah, and then you'd really say stuff that you didn't want to. You'd regret later. Yeah,
probably. He adds that he paid him very well, but his salary was nowhere near Whit's. However, it beat selling computer chips. It won't in a few years. I mean, that's going to be an industry.
Yeah, well,
But like the
yeah.
whole Silicon Valley thing,
Yeah.
which is it's always funny to see TV shows either predict the future or sort of fall flat with regards to what the future is going to be. Like, you know, oh, there's no future and that is never going to go anywhere. Spoiler alert, it did. So Laura asks how their merchandise is brought into the country, and he says by boat, adding that they have a warehouse in Hong Kong that ships to Long Beach. Laura then asks if the name Marla Rakubian rings a bell. Bigelow asks why, and Laura says that she thinks what might have been having an affair with her. Bigelow, of course, just laughs. Then we get a scene switch.
Okay. That's the second time that Laura has jumped to a wildly unwarranted conclusion that Sterling was having an affair. What is it about her frame of mind that has her assuming that simply because there's a woman's name connected to the case, that this guy must have been having an affair with her?
Well, Grace
I mean, isn't it a little bit, dare I say it, sexist to presume that simply because there's a woman connected to the case that Sterling must have been having an affair with her? I mean,
well, Grace Kelton said she was having an affair with him. That was what Laura was told. At least that was my interpretation, because when Laura confronts Grace, she's like, "You're not going to tell Whit, are you?" So I can only assume.
He's already denied it.
Yeah.
And she's had confirmation from Bigelow that no, Sterling and his wife were madly in love. He wasn't having an affair with anybody. And if he's his right-hand man, he would probably notice issues with the scheduling if the guy was spending a bunch of time off with some other woman. I mean, it's an unwarranted conclusion at this point based on all the evidence she's gotten.
Bigelow is kind of a crappy murderer, though, because you would think that in order to protect their story, he would have falsely confirmed that he was having an affair with Grace Kelton when she asked, and that he would have tried to pretend that Marla Rakubian was in fact a woman, because I can't imagine he wants her finding the boat.
Well,
you know,
I'm thinking that he figured they were safe even if they found the boat, and he didn't want the idea of an affair brought up, because if he's having an affair, maybe she's having an affair, and if she's having an affair, who would she be having it with? Somebody close to her, perhaps. And
at this point, it's not possible. I could see that if Whit were still alive, because he could come out and say, well, I'm not able to physically...
Boinky.
Yeah, like I'm trying to say it in a way that is family friendly, but I'm not able to physically perform in the way that an affair would necessitate. So therefore I'm not having an affair, but he's gone. There's nobody there aside from Claudia who's not about to say anything, because then that makes their affair potentially possible. So I don't know.
I just think it's a little bit, I think there's something else going on that's causing her to say, well, I think he's having an affair with this woman. Okay, well, you already shot down one that he wasn't having an affair with. So why, it just seems a little bit odd to me.
I don't disagree with you. They do come across a lot of people having affairs in all of their cases, though. So maybe it's just the sheer amount, right? And this is men and women, like across the board. It seems like anytime they investigate a couple, one of them's cheating. So,
yeah, that's true.
And sometimes with really creepy people, like the one with the breath of steel.
Yeah.
Chip and the mother and stepmother.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Sorry.
Who was doing everybody.
Yeah. Gross. Then we see the camera pan back on a boat with the name Marla Rakubian. Steele, dressed in a suit with his hair slicked back, some sunglasses on, boards the boat, flashes an ID very fast, and introduces himself as Harrington from Customs. Here's my question. What ID did he actually use? Because it clearly isn't. Later on, when Chester demands he sees the ID, it's obviously not an actual customs ID. So what, did he just flash his private investigator's license, or did he flash his driver's license? What did he show them?
Well, it could have been a private investigator's card and shield. I think some states may require that a private investigator carry certain IDs that may mimic at a quick glance, official ID. So yeah, something like that. But he really didn't even give the guy a chance to look at it. So, he could have shown him something from a box of Cracker Jacks.
He needs to find the doctor from Doctor Who and get some of that psychic paper, because that is honestly the best plot device ever invented. So you're giving me a look, which means you've never watched Doctor Who. So on Doctor Who, the doctor carries a few things with him that are basically like get out of jail plot device cards that he can use to kind of avoid having to deal with situations like this. One of them is his sonic screwdriver, which can pretty much open anything. Or fix anything or alter anything. He presses a few buttons and
it's
does
a magic device. Yes.
Yeah. It's a Deus Ex Machina. It does whatever it needs to do. But he's also got psychic paper, which basically he flips it open and it shows the person reading it whatever he wants it to show them. Of course, you can't let your mind wander, because sometimes it shows them other stuff, which we've seen happen for humorous and amusing effect, but it allows him to get into pretty much any situation and bypass all the who are you and why are you here stuff that could potentially be an issue if they're landing on a different planet with a different culture, different military or whatever. So he just kind of flips it open and he says, I'm the doctor, I'm in charge. And they're like, oh yeah, of course you are. It's like the Jedi mind hand waves. Mr. Steele needs some psychic paper is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Definitely
all right.
See, it was a Doctor Who reference, not a Buffy one. So anyway, so he gets on the boat and the man on the boat asks why he's not in uniform. Steele says he's from DC office checking in on his boys. Not harassing you too much, are they? No, splendid, good man, carry on. And this again goes into that, what we were talking about before with the morgue situation, where if you do something with enough confidence, most people will assume you're meant to be there. Not everybody, of course, as we see later in the scene.
Chester.
Whatever. But yeah, like a lot of people will just kind of let you do your thing, right? And he goes into the bowels of the boat, sees a bunch of crates. They're all marked fragile.
And they're all just thrown all over the place. I'm sorry. That's not how cargo would be handled. Even if you're in the middle of moving it, it would still be organized, and only the pieces that you're moving would be out of position. That's not
logic.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
He pokes around them until he sees a piece of iron and basically uses it to pry open one of the crates. And inside, he finds a small, I don't know what to call this, jewelry box?
Yeah, that's what I took it to be.
Yeah, because I wasn't really sure what else it would be other than a jewelry box. But it's like obviously kind of glossed over and has a nice design on it. And it's wrapped in the same paper that the name Marla Rakubian was written on. So he's about to open it when some footsteps come towards him. He looks up and there's Chester.
Does this guy always talk about himself in the third person?
Yeah, there's something. I guess this is one of those situations where they were like, well, we need a minion. We need a henchman. Let's make him a little different. Let's give him a quirk, right? Let's make him memorable. He talks about himself in the third person. That's normal, right? Yeah, totally normal. We'll go with that.
Yeah, right.
It is weird.
Okay. Yeah.
It's weird. Yeah.
So
he stands up. He tries to do the same. Harrington from Customs, adding that they got a tip to check the ship for contraband. Dude, if you're trying to pass yourself off as a customs agent or whatever it is, maybe use a different excuse. Maybe say like we were asked to come and make sure that all the cargo's here or something. Because
routine random inspection of your manifest.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to say I'm checking for contraband, because if you are in front of one of the bad guys, which he is, they're not going to want you to see it no matter who you are.
Yeah, that's true. That's
they're not going to be like, oh, you're from Customs. Oh, yeah, sure. Come on.
Yeah, well, as stupid as it sounds, I have heard that on the U.S. tax forms, I have not seen it myself, but somewhere on some U.S. tax form that somebody might be filling out, not their primary 1040, but like a supplemental form, that it actually asks if you have any income from illegal activities. And, I can't imagine that they would ask that question if nobody was answering it in the affirmative. So
well, it's funny that you say that, because my husband just applied for Canadian citizenship, and one of the questions on the citizenship application, as well as the visa for permanent residency, there's a couple of questions that ask things like, have you ever committed acts of genocide? Are you a terrorist? And like you said, I can only think, like, who would say yes to that? Even if you were, you wouldn't admit to it. But my husband is not just Canadian government. He's a nice guy.
But the whole fact that they asked the question,
the fact that the question's
and
there
have it on the form, it kind of implies that some people do say, "Oh yeah, is that a problem?"
Oh wait, I'm not supposed to? Shoot.
Yeah. Can I get an eraser here? Can I get a new copy of the form?
I did this in pen. Damn it. So he flashes the badge quickly again, but the thug is not buying it. And he calls him. He speaks of himself in the third person. Chester says, "Let me see that ID." Okay, Chester. Yeah, he pretends to reach for it again, then punches him, turns and makes a run for it, goes kind of through the bottom of the ship, makes it to the sleeping quarters, and he thinks he's escaped when a hand comes through the door beside him and grabs him, throwing him into the other room. Steele says, "That's unfair home field advantage." Wait a minute. Did Steele just make a sports metaphor?
Yes. And I actually can explain that beyond what most people think it is.
Okay.
In the early days of baseball, 1800s,
okay, if we're doing
late
a shot
1800s,
every time I mention Buffy, we're doing a shot every time you mention baseball. Just saying. Works both ways.
I have not had nearly as many baseball references as you have Buffy references.
Fair.
But anyway, late 1800s, early 1900s, the home team would doctor the field. They would adjust the height of the pitcher's mound to the optimum height for their pitcher, which, of course, wouldn't necessarily be good for the opposing team's pitcher. They would maybe soak the outfield or the base paths. One field was made or groomed in such a way that, from first to second to third, it was downhill, but going into home base, it was uphill. There was another field that had, in the outfield, had like gopher holes or something like that had a long life to them. It wasn't like, oh, we found a gopher hole, we're going to go fill it up. It's no, we know it's there, but the other team doesn't.
Yeah,
so if their guy happens to run through it and put his foot into it and fall while he's chasing a fly ball, oh, that would be a shame, wouldn't it? That was literally the origin of the term home field advantage, because it gave the home team an opportunity to customize the field to their advantage and their opposing team's disadvantage.
Do you think Steele knew that, though? Because I'm thinking no.
No, but he knew the phrase.
Yeah.
I'm just explaining it for listeners.
Same phrase exists, but for hockey, it's home ice. But yeah, I doubt there was. Well, maybe they did. I don't know if they did the same thing with. I'll have to look into that. But yeah, that makes sense.
The opposing goal was 2 inches narrower and shorter than.
Yeah, it makes sense though. Like it does.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got Steele making a sports metaphor. Chester says you're dead, as the other thug grabs him. Chester hits him in the chest and the face, and we see him go unconscious. And then we see the men loading large chests from the ship. As Laura approaches, she asks the other thug if the ship has been fully unloaded. He says yes, and she asks where the cargo went, and he tells her to check the manifest, as it's probably gone to CFS for customs. She asks the two men if they have seen a tall, dark-haired man with an English accent, adding that he's a bit overdressed. I like that she gets in a dig here about his wardrobe. I don't know.
Sure.
Why not? They haul the trunk into the back of the truck, and Chester says nope. And they drive away. Laura watches them go.
Without raising the tailgate. You know how long that chest is going to stay in that tail?
It was in my notes. Steele's going to go flying. Yeah. That's not a good idea.
I mean, even with the tailgate up, depending on what you have in there, it's not necessarily a sure thing that it's going to stay in there, but it's certainly with a chest. If you've got a chest in the bed of a truck, you got to close that tailgate or it's going sliding out. But it's dumb.
So then we get.
And how long does it take to close a tailgate? It takes about a second and a half.
Right. So yeah, we get a scene switch, and then in what looks to be a shipping container, I'm guessing. Is that what he's trapped in? I wasn't really sure what this building was supposed to be.
I'm thinking it's just a warehouse building. Not a shipping container. It's a warehouse, I think, with some sort of corrugated metal on the walls to differentiate the different areas of it. It strikes me as stereotypically stupid to have a bed in there that can be used to climb up.
Well, to be fair, I don't think they expected him to be like an acrobat.
Well, I mean, consider the possibilities and eliminate as many as possible.
Yeah, fair enough. Anyway. Either way, he's tied to a chair, and the woman we thought was Grace Kelton, and they never really say if that's not her name. She's sort of what kind of gets me is they refer to her as a kleptomaniac throughout the entire episode, and she's not. That was a part that she was playing.
But that's their view. So
yeah, so she's hitting him. And it looks as if she's been there a while, as his vision is hazy and he's pretty out of it. I got to say, I don't know who taught her torture, but she's bad at it. She's bad at it because she doesn't give him any chances to respond. She just keeps hitting him.
I don't know. Maybe it's an approach.
I don't want to be critical of her torture methods, but maybe give him some time to answer before you smack him again.
Yeah.
Because she's just and we see his vision fading in and out, right? Sometimes he sees Grace and sometimes he sees Laura asking, and the questions change because she asks, what were you doing on the Recubian? Who sent him? Then he sees Laura asking what his real name is, turns back to Grace, who hits him again and asks what he's looking for, switches back to Laura. Why are you staying around? Then back to Grace. Who are you working for? I like this concept. I do. I like the concept that he's seeing Laura asking these questions that she's been asking him all this time in his most sort of vulnerable moment, but we didn't get the setup for this.
I guess the setup is implied just in the whole first and second season.
Yeah, I guess, but they've been apart all season 3. This question has not come up again. Really. It hasn't. I don't know. It just feels like it's an odd spot to put this scene. Especially since the first act of this episode was him just being a complete jerk to her and her needing reassurance from him that she's not crazy or that what she has been doing is not a setup or whatever. It feels like they've done a hard shift to these relationship issues that they've been dealing with for the first 2 seasons of the show and then kind of ignored in season 3 because they weren't together for the bulk of it. It was addressed in the first episode, and then it was kind of like, okay, well, they're in a freeze, so we're not even going to talk about these things. And now they're back in the thaw, but so far all we've seen as a thaw is him trying to get her to go somewhere. They haven't actually had any conversations about why he's sticking around, what he wants from her. And I get that it's, again, this is meant to set up the finale. But it might have made more sense if there was some sort of conversation post-thaw leading to this.
Yeah. And I just took a look back at the production codes, and it's not entirely out of sequence, except for the fact that the episode that came before Diced Steel is out of sequence. That one actually should have come in later, if the production codes can be used as a guide for the sequencing. So yeah, I mean, it's so even if we take Diced Steel out and put it later in the season, as the codes would suggest. Yeah, it does seem a little bit odd. And the jump to this issue of Steele having these visions. Yeah, it's a little, even within the episode itself, it's a little bit, it feels like it's rushed, like maybe they left out some scenes that it just seems a little
and this is where we go back to that thing that we've been talking about all season, because the alternate fan order that I have, has Steal Your Heart Away as episode 14 in the alternate fan order. That's, of course, the Amnesia Ireland episode, right? And in that episode, that's where Laura learns that he doesn't know who he is. Then the following episode is Have I Got a Steal for You, episode 15, in the alternate fan order. So right immediately after she learns that he doesn't actually know his real name or his birth certificate or anything like that, that's when you have the thaw start, which kind of makes sense because she's got a better understanding of him and who he is or who he isn't, more importantly. And then in the alternate order, springtime comes next, then Steele Trying, where they go off to San Francisco and they have this attempt to, well, he manufactures a case, but there is some moments in that episode where they connect on a deeper level. And then you've got Steele and the family, and then you've got this one. And then in that alternate order, as you pointed out, Dice Steele is the second last episode of the season. So that order kind of at least makes this make a little more sense, because you've got a few episodes before that at least give us that buildup, whereas this seems to come out of nowhere the way it's positioned.
Well, this is definitely the kind of question that we would have to ask. We would have to get somebody on the show who was involved in the production to ask, because
that's true.
Because this whole question about episode order has been confusing to everybody for forever, since since the beginning of the show, or since the beginning of the show's fandom. Yeah,
I honestly still don't know if that alternate order is just something that a fan came up with that they felt makes the season make more sense, or if it was intended to be shown that way and just wasn't for whatever reason. So
but even if we just go with the factual data that we have, the production numbers, the numbers are so all over the place. It just kind of makes you wonder, okay, how did this happen? Because presumably the production's numbers were assigned sequentially, and yet the play order is so scrambled. Yeah, that would have to be somebody on the inside that would be able to maybe give us that information. And if that ever happened, maybe maybe this podcast, if we ever got somebody here that could do that, maybe this podcast could answer that fan question that has been vexing us these many decades.
Yeah. 40-year-old mystery. Oh, answer a mystery. It's a mystery show. But either way, putting that part aside, I do like this scene, because even though it seems to come out of nowhere, it makes sense that in his delirium, he's going to see the person that, like, and I don't mean that this to sound that like he sees Laura as somebody who's torturing him, but he has, for the last 3 years, been at the mercy of Laura wanting to know these things that he can't give her, and having no way of answering them.
Right.
How long are you staying? Well, that's kind of an unfair question when they don't even know where their relationship stands.
Right.
And even then, you can't really answer. You can promise somebody forever, but I think he's smart enough to realize that, given Laura, the things that Laura has lost in her life so far, if he makes a promise, she's going to expect him to honor it. And he's lived a life that's so precarious that he doesn't necessarily think that anything's ever permanent. So how can you make that kind of promise? It's kind of a catch-22. Neither one of them is wrong, but they're not meeting each other where they need to meet each other. So there's that question. And there's, of course, the question of, what is your real name? Something that he can't tell her. Then, of course, do you love me?
And I think that's really this whole scene was constructed to get us to that.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, could they have done it another way? Maybe, I don't know. But I think the whole point of this sequence was to get us to his response to that question.
And it's interesting because this is a product of his mind, right? It's
Right.
interesting that before she asks him, she says, "Do you know that I love you?" So on some subconscious level, he's aware that she's in love with him.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least he believes her to be.
Or at least, I was going to say that, yeah.
Right? I mean, we
In his mind.
know she is, but in his mind, he knows that she loves him, and that he also knows she wants him to tell her how he feels. And he says, "I think so." And then, of course, he says, "I love you." Because after Grace says, "You think what?" He says, "I love you." This is the only time he's ever said it on the series.
Yeah.
And I mean, Q fans screaming in frustration that it's not to her. But at the same time, maybe he needed to say it out loud to himself.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Maybe there's that moment where he's like, "Oh, yeah, I do love this person." So it's interesting that the only question he's able to answer in this entire interrogation is the one that he can't answer whenever Laura asks.
Yeah. Well, it's alcohol or a beating. Both of them will get you to say things that you wouldn't say otherwise, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, Grace is like, "What?"
Yeah, and I love when the fake Majak and Chester come in, they ask if she got anything out of him. Yeah, he loves me.
And she's just like, yeah, he loves me. Like, what is maybe if you had given him a second to answer, lady, he wouldn't be delirious and seeing things. But okay, now can we put this in another one of his concussion? Like, tick that on the box, because he's clearly not. Something's not going right in his brain.
Yeah.
So yeah. Chester says Chester will make him talk. Be hilarious if he said that to Chester.
Yeah.
And then the fake Majak says, "Dead man don't talk." Steele passes out again, and fake Majak tells him that when he comes to come and get him, if they were just going to kill him anyway, what was the point? Like, I get it.
Well,
I get
you could argue that they're trying to find out, one, how much he knows, and two, has he passed it along to anybody?
Fair.
Because if they eliminate him, but he's already shared the information with somebody else, then eliminating him doesn't necessarily get them any farther along in protecting themselves.
True, but you think they'd continue to torture him then, or interrogate him rather than, well, we'll kill him later. Yeah.
Well, I think that's the plan. Is they're going to let him recover and then take another shot at him and keep at him until they get answers that they want.
Or a wedding proposal.
And then, yeah, or that too. I'm sure he just carries the ring around for those occasions when
he's waiting
somebody
for Clarissa.
comes along. Yeah. Oh,
sorry, fans. Sorry. I apologize. Apologizing.
But yeah, they're going to get rid of him. But yeah.
Oh, yeah. So Chester grabs him and drags him over to a small bed, which you pointed out is there, where he dumps him on a dirty mattress. I don't want to know where that mattress has been.
No.
Oh, that is one of those. That is one of those biohazards that you're just like, nah, gross. He groans and rolls over, forcing himself to his feet. Takes in his surroundings, tries the door, but of course it's locked. He looks up and sees there's a skylight, but the only other thing in the room is the bed. So he drags the bed into the corner of the room, tries standing on it, but it's not high enough. He drags a chair over, takes a mattress off, puts a shoe into the springs, gets caught for a moment and pulls it out, grabs a plank of wood, places it on the springs, then he takes a bucket, puts it on the chair, climbs on the... This is a good way to break your neck.
Yeah.
He jumps from the bucket to the bed, bounces high enough to grab a hold of... What are those?
This is like something a kid would try out in his backyard.
Yeah.
Just before he breaks his arm and,
Yeah,
and a couple
exactly.
of the important body parts.
Yeah, pretty much. So I don't know what to call these metal pipes that are just like attached roof supports. Like, what are they supposed to be?
No, I think they're probably wiring conduits would be my guess. So, it's just that galvanized metal, like a pipe type affair
Yeah.
that you run electrical wires through. Why they would have that in the middle of a warehouse
I had a lot of questions about
space,
this.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Obviously, the warehouse was designed to make it easy for somebody to eventually escape.
Well, I mean, it's one of those warehouses you see in TV all the time where they're only ever used by bad guys, and it's only ever used to do illegal stuff, and it's probably owned by the Greykirk Corporation. You know?
Yeah, the company that stores stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, he gets up there on this pipe thing, bar, whatever you want to call it, and then he grabs onto another beam, hoists himself up on it, kicking the skylight window out with his feet, which I would think the glass would then fall in.
Well, my question about this whole thing is that with as much noise as he's been making.
Yeah, right?
Why aren't they hearing that he's come to and come back in and try to start interrogating him? At which point they would, of course, catch him trying to get out. I mean, it's like, yeah, and of course, why did they even throw him onto the bed in the first place? Why not just leave him tied up to the chair?
Well, on the floor, yeah. What's the point of? I mean, if they cared about his comfort, they would not have given him that bed. So there's no
if they cared about his comfort, they wouldn't have been beating him.
Well, that's true. That too. Yeah. So he kicks through this window, and then he pulls himself through the window, and somehow doesn't cut himself.
Yeah.
And once on the roof, he walks across a beam, raft, ladder that joins the two buildings for some reason.
Yeah, walkway of some sort.
Yeah. Then he looks down through the same skylight setup into the room that he's above, and he sees the thugs playing some kind of card game. Sarcastically says he's delighted they're having such a good time, and somehow gets down off the roof. We don't really see how, but somehow he does it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, some of those buildings have external ladders on them. Some of them are going to have an internal ladder where you access the roof from a ladder that's inside the building, and others, it's a ladder that's outside. So if he found an outside ladder, there you go.
Fair enough. Back in the office, Laura is looking at the smuggled temple figure and musing that the phony Majak was likely blackmailing Sterling when he found out about the smuggling operation. Mildred says that's a sharp piece of deduction, and she doesn't want to dissuade her, but why would the phony Majak kill Sterling? She points out it would be biting the hand that feeds you. Laura admits that it's a bit murky, and that's when Mildred seizes on the chance, saying how she knows they've ruled out suicide, but what if he was sick and decided to end it all before the goop hit the fan? Laura insists it was murder, and Mildred placates her, saying that if it was suicide, they could mark the case closed. No, they couldn't. There's still a whole smuggling operation.
Yeah, but I guess you could say that wasn't the case we were looking into, so we can just kind of ignore it and pretend that we didn't know about
Laura's
it.
Going to let that go.
Yeah. But I mean, you can always hope, I guess.
Yeah. Laura says, like what? And Mildred hands her a file folder filled with travel brochures. Yeah. Laura looks through them, saying each one aloud: Cabo San Lucas, Rio de Janeiro, the Fiji Islands. She looks at Mildred accusingly, and Mildred tells Laura that the boss is worried about her physical and mental state. Laura sarcastically says not to mention his tan. I don't know about you, but I don't see Steele as Tanner. Do you?
Not really.
No. He's from, okay. Apologies to anybody from the UK here, but having married somebody from the UK, I feel like I am within my rights to say this. They don't see enough of the sun over there to tan. And I know for a fact, my husband goes out onto the beach, and the sun, he's ginger, okay? The sun is his enemy.
Yeah.
He
turns
looks
into a
out,
lobster.
Yeah, he looks out the window and he starts to bake. You know, he goes outside and people are like, "Oh my God, the beacons are lit. Gondor calls for aid." Shining white skin and all. Yeah, I don't see Steele as a tanner.
No.
But yeah, so she's obviously, though, Laura is still pretty cynical about this whole let's go on a vacation. Mildred pleads with her to let her check Sterling's medical records to be safe, adding that the rooms in Fiji have a hot tub in every room. I gotta love that this is what this is what causes Laura to pause and goes, well, couldn't hurt.
Yeah.
That hot tub. Now, do you think it's...
Of course, was she referring to the hot tubs and closing the case, or was she referring to it wouldn't hurt to check on Sterling's medical report because maybe there's something of interest in there that's going to break the case wide open?
Oh no, I think she was considering that hot tub. What I don't know is whether it was...
I didn't think so.
Whether it was because she just wants to relax in a hot tub by herself, or whether she was picturing Steele in said hot tub and all the activity that goes along with it.
See, I was thinking that she was referring to the medical report and having Mildred run the medical report on Sterling with the idea that there might be something useful in there for her to use to help build her case. I don't know.
I would assume that too if it weren't for the fact that she only relents after Mildred mentions the hot tub.
Well, except that it was in the same sentence. Well, yeah, it's let me check his report just to be safe, implied because you'll really love the hotels in Fiji because they have a hot tub in every room. It's all part of the same statement from Mildred. And so I don't think you can point to the hot tubs specifically. And knowing Laura's mentality and her approach to things, I'm thinking she's seized on that medical report portion. But
I'm kind of wondering why they didn't check this before, because...
Well, we've had this conversation before about things where if you'd have just checked this, you would have solved the case 30 minutes ago. But, okay. Jeff.
Either way, Steele throws open the door in dramatic fashion, looking thoroughly destroyed. Laura looks up at him in shock and asks what he's been doing. He says he's been beaten to a pulp, crammed in a steamer trunk, locked in an abandoned warehouse, drugged, tortured, but otherwise shown a raucous good time.
Yeah.
I do. That's good. And then Mildred is shocked and she holds up the temple figures, all because of this. And Laura says she thought something was being smuggled on that ship, but it cleared customs without a hitch. Steele wonders why they wouldn't want to get a closer look at it. Laura grabs her coat, saying the cargo bears closer scrutiny. So they are out the door. And so you got to think that at least Steele is on board now with the case. Even if he's not on board. Yeah.
There's certainly something going on there that somebody doesn't want you to know about.
Something is not right. Inside the Sterling Bigelow import warehouse, Steele and Laura are sitting in the middle of the shipment with packing supplies strewn all over the place and no crime clothes.
Mm-hmm. And again, stuff just kind of piled up here, there, and everywhere. Not like it would be in a real warehouse, but we won't mention that or make too fine a point of it.
But if you're going to do crime and you're going to go out of your way to have crime clothes for crime, they should go home and get the crime clothes. Like, that's just a quick stop on the way, you know?
I mean, you got them for a reason. Use them.
You got your standards. Yeah, you don't want to get sloppy.
No.
So yeah, they're sitting there, and this is interesting because they don't usually mention previous episodes unless it's relevant to a character that's either being reintroduced or what have you. But Laura unwraps another harmless-looking jewelry box and asks Steele if he remembers how frustrated he got when he couldn't figure out who killed Myron Flowers, the breastmaking. And he says he remembers it, calling it Steele's last case. And Laura says this might be Holt's last case because she can't figure out what's going on. She's got a hat full of clues and nothing to string them together. So it's kind of interesting that they would pull back to that episode with no reason. Like, they didn't have to. They could have just had her say, I've got a hat full of clues and nothing to string them together. I'm frustrated.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, you know, we've talked about how this is episodic and they can't necessarily assume that a viewer has seen all the past episodes. And so there's an understandable reluctance sometimes to make reference to that. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, I think it's even back then during these episodic episodes, it was a nice way to reward the loyal fans.
Yes,
I
yes.
liked it.
And in
when
the
they would do
real
something
world,
like
you would do that. You would refer
exactly.
back to your previous experiences. So I do like the line. I think it's a
Mhm.
good way to, like you said, reward people who've been watching it. Also to show how frustrated Laura is, because she's not usually this. She usually has some idea of what's going on, but she's got no clue what's happening here. She's got a suicide she doesn't think is a suicide. She's got smuggling that isn't smuggling. Yeah, antiques that are a Majak that isn't a Majak. It's a whole big
the kleptomaniac who isn't a kleptomaniac.
Yeah, everything is not what it seems, and she's just like she throws down the paper in frustration. And Steele looks at her and says they've been so caught up in their cases lately, he wonders if that's the only thing stringing them together. Laura looks a little hurt and says, nobody says you had to stick around. That is kind of going from 1 to 100 there.
Yeah.
Because that's not what he was saying at all. And he could have phrased it differently, to be fair. But at the same time, it looks like he's trying to bring up post-thaw, hey, we've been trying to connect, and it hasn't been happening.
The cases are getting in the way.
Yeah, are we sure we're not burying ourselves in work in order to avoid talking about this?
Well, I think it's also him trying to say, look, we've got this relationship that we've been kind of playing around and working on, but not working on, and pursuing, but not really pursuing. And part of the reason is we've been so busy on cases, we haven't had the time to dedicate to trying to build our relationship. And we've gotten to the point where it's only the cases that are keeping us together at the moment, and not the time that we're and energy and effort we're spending finding other things that are available to keep us together. You know, our personal relationship. You know, these things are taking up too much time, and we're not doing these other things.
And this is the second time this question has sort of come up in this, because the first episode, when she puts the can agreement into place, she says something similar, that she needs it to be just business, no pleasure, because things get too complicated when they try to do both things at once. Then he brings it up here, and then in the finale, which again, this is directly setting up, after crap hits the fan, she asks him that same question when she, I don't know why I'm trying to avoid spoilers. We know what happens when she basically breaks it off again.
No spoilers!
After the agency's license is taken, she basically kind of says the same thing. Is this the only thing keeping us together? So it's a fair question to ask, because they haven't really had anything else to connect them, right? And so obviously she reacts. She's hurt by the question. Nobody said you had to stick around, and he replies, well, with any luck, in a few days he'll be gone. She looks up in surprise and says, oh, and then he continues, kind of like moving close to her. We'll be reclining on a beach, a cool breeze, azure skies, a pina colada, and a wonderful young lady by my side. He kisses her, and obviously she's clued into his fantasy. Anyone I know? So they kiss again.
No, you haven't met her yet.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I figured I'd pick her up when I get there.
Yeah.
And they kiss again and sink down onto the shredded packing paper, and I gotta think, he can't really be expecting this to be their first time, right?
Well,
that'd be awkward. Anyway, however, of course, mid-kiss, he sits up, having realized something, and Laura, laughing, asks if it was that much of a letdown. But it's nice that she's not bothered by it. She's just like, whoa, okay, that didn't do it for you, huh? But he's not listening. He mentions the paper the items were wrapped in. Laura asks, what about it? He tells her this isn't the same paper he saw on board the ship. He remembers opening them up, and the paper is different. Laura asks how he knows. He reaches into his pockets and tells her to close her eyes. I gotta think, and maybe this is just, I don't know about the U.S., but we haven't, in Canada, we haven't had paper money for a while. In fact, I can't remember how long it's been, but our money's been like that plastic money for a while. But prior to that, when we did have paper money, and I actually have some over there. I've got a $2 bill I saved. Wouldn't you like immediately feel that, like when you touch the paper? I know that's why he notices it, but like the first time he pulls open the Marla Rakubian thing, wouldn't he be like, this feels like money? Wouldn't you think that? Like,
well, U.S. paper currency really isn't paper. It's a type of paper. It's actually made of a cotton blended with some other things.
Do you guys still have, like, is it plastic like ours, or is it?
No, it's.
I haven't been to the States in a while. So
it's still, as far as I know, it's still made a lot with cotton and other natural materials blended together. But it does have a distinctive feel. In fact, I've read a number of different places from people where they say if you are a professional money handler, in a bank or whatever, one of the things that they learn just naturally from handling so much is that they learn the feel of the money, so that if somebody passes a counterfeit to them,
right,
they're going to know, wait, so this doesn't feel right. Whereas somebody at the local fast food joint, they're not going to know. They get these little charts to say, look for this at this little symbol and that thing and whatever. And they got the little marker pens because they don't have enough experience handling the currency to be able to tell just by feel that something isn't right. But in this case, it may be a matter of context, because he was looking, when he was on the Rakubian, he was looking at the actual items that were being imported, the jewelry boxes, the whatever. Right. He wasn't really concerning himself with the paper that much. In fact, if we go back and look at it, I think he just grabbed the thing and just pulled the paper off without even really handling it too much. And so in the context of the situation, he might not have picked it up. Plus, he is a con man and probably a forger and has some experience with paper or paper money, but maybe not enough that out of context he would pick up on that.
Fair enough. And
in this particular case, the thing that triggers him is that it's a different color.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that alerts him to the fact that, hey, this is not the same paper. And wait a second. And then he thinks back on it and thinks, wait a second. When I was handling that paper that they were wrapped in back on the ship, wait a minute. And then he goes and pulls out the sample he's got in his pocket.
Yeah, fair enough. So he does this little close your eyes trick.
Close your eyes and open your mouth.
Yeah, he reaches into his pockets. He tells her to close her eyes. She's annoyed, not wanting to play games, but he convinces her to do it. He reaches into his pocket. He pulls out the slip of paper and the name of the ship that had the name of the ship was written on, along with a dollar bill. He hands her both of them and asks her which is the dollar bill. She wonders if it's a trick question, and he asks again. She feels the paper, switches hands, and finally concludes that unless they're different denominations, they both are. He tells her to open her eyes, and she does, looking down and seeing the paper. It dawns on her. She asks if he is sure the antiques aboard the ship were wrapped in the same paper, and he says yes, leading her to realize it wasn't antiques they were smuggling, that it was the paper. She realizes they are dealing with international counterfeiters, and he's kind of thrilled by this. What a wonderfully bizarre twist. I like that. I like how he's just kind of delighted that, oh, it's not antiques. Ooh. Ooh. This is a fun change. So then we see them walking through a car junkyard. I kind of wondered how they would get there, and then we find out it's to visit this acquaintance of Steele's. You got to wonder how he meets these people.
Yeah.
I really, really want to know the stories behind it, because... Yeah. So Laura recaps, saying that the phony Majak was using Sterling to smuggle any counterfeit paper. Steele adds that Sterling was smuggling Chinese artifacts. Laura adds that he found out what the phony Majak was up to and threatened to blow the whistle. Steele adds that the phony Majak hired Laura to blackmail Sterling into silence. Whew, it's complicated.
Yeah.
And then she says it got a little dirtier than Majak expected. And Steele says that Sterling ended up dead. And then she corrects him, murdered. At this point, though, I gotta say, suicide would be a very real possibility given what happened to him.
Yeah. And it would certainly fit all the facts that they have up to this point.
Yeah.
However, having said that, I think, and if there's anybody in law enforcement that is listening, one of the things I understand about people in law enforcement is that they trust, they get gut feelings and they
Right.
trust their guts. And I would say that probably Laura, being an experienced private investigator of what now, 10 years, 8 years at least, I think we once calculated.
Yeah.
She probably has a gut feeling that it wasn't suicide, it was murder. And you know, there's things you know and things you can prove, and they aren't the same thing.
Yeah.
So I think at this point, Laura knows that it wasn't suicide in her gut, but she can't prove it at this point. And
Well,
so
it's interesting.
she's kind of tilting against windmills in a sense.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say that because initially her desire to believe it was murder was simply because of her guilt. She
Mhm.
wanted to be absolved of having been the thing that caused him to kill himself. Given the stuff that has gone on since, I would buy that that's maybe changed from just pure absolution to, hey, wait a minute, there's a whole counterfeit ring happening here. That being said, at this point, she doesn't need it to be suicide for her own inner peace, I don't think. Because it wouldn't necessarily be her fault. I mean, he was into some criminal stuff. She was used as a pawn. So I don't necessarily think that her own conscience needs it to be murder anymore, which would lead your theory to be more the case that now it's not necessarily about her conscience. It's more about, okay, there's other stuff going on here. I still think it's murder, but not for the same reasons.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, I mean, yeah. So Steele says that remains to be proven, and they both jump out of their skin as the doors to a shaggin' wagon open, revealing. So that's what I call one of those. Is there another name for them? Because that's what I call them.
I've never heard that term before, but I like it.
No? Oh, yeah, it's a shaggin' wagon.
Well, it's a classic. It's a semi-classic VW bus.
Yeah.
It's not the highly sought after 21 window Safari bus, or
No.
yeah, but it's still it would still be cool to have.
Yeah, it would be cool to have. And Steele apparently knows this man who is named Weasel.
Yeah.
Cool. He knows Steele as well, but asks who the Catholic schoolgirl is, meaning Laura. Laura somewhat condescendingly replies that if she knew they would be meeting in such illustrious surroundings, she would have dressed the part. Ouch. Maybe don't insult the guy that you're there to get information from.
Yeah, well.
Weasel says, well, you know, it's not everyone he invites into his home. Laura is dubious that this even is a home, but Weasel says, yeah, he even has a summer home, pointing to the Cadillac on the left. And I love how Steele just doesn't even blink. He's like, oh, the Eldorado. It's the only one I have.
Yep.
He just goes with it, right? Weasel gets down to business and asks Steele to lay it on him. Steele hands him the envelope filled with cash, to which Weasel tests not only a flashlight, but by eating a bit of it. Would that work? Could you test how counterfeit money is counterfeit by eating it?
I don't know. I've seen that before on other shows. And I suppose
I'm going to Google it.
that due to the unique and proprietary formulation of the paper used in U.S. currency, you might be able to tell a difference. by taste. And I'm sure it's more than just the taste, but also the consistency in the mouth, how it dissolves, things like that. Because I know it's got a cotton content to it, and that would change how it responds in the mouth.
Okay, I've just Googled it.
Okay.
And I mean, this probably doesn't help because this is probably like current money as opposed to money from the 80s. But do you guys make your money the same way? Have you changed it at all in the last 40 years?
Oh, I'm using the same printer back over here to print my money.
I don't mean you specifically. I just mean, like, is it made the same way? Because ours isn't. Like I said, ours is plastic.
They've made changes to it. They've added, they've not only changed the design, but they've also added metal anti-counterfeiting strips and holographic elements to the printing. But in terms of the paper consistency, the paper formulation, that I don't know.
Yeah, I'm getting all kinds of like wiki how to know that your money is counterfeit. And so far, sight, touch, looking for the thinness of the bill, the color shifting ink. Let's see. It does not say, and it also says do not create counterfeit money. So it's like a how to detect it, but also don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Just don't. Yeah, there's nothing in here about eating it. So if anybody knows whether or not eating it would actually do anything, like if there's a way to find out that it's counterfeit by putting it in your mouth, don't put it in your mouth. Just let us know. Email us or something, because don't eat your money. Just tell us, So yeah, in return, he hands Laura an envelope with money. Laura takes it out and looks at it, immediately not impressed with it. She tells him that she's seen better paper on the newsstands. Weasel tells her if it was perfect, it would be real.
Yeah.
But Steele is fine with it because, of course, this is the point.
Mm-hmm.
He says all they need is a hearty soul to pass it. Poor Mildred.
Yeah.
Poor Mildred.
Mm-hmm.
She is dressed like a bum once again. She is quite distressed about their scheme, arguing that she can't do it. And then Steele pulls out a dead fish, calling it eau de carp, and begins rubbing it all over her.
Yep.
Oh, this is awful. Like Mildred, poor Mildred. Not only does she
I
have to
hope
look
she
like
gets paid well.
There's got to be a bonus. Like she needs to renegotiate her contract for like any undercover work where she has to smell like fish gets immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Double pay.
She wonders why she can't just do a computer check, but Laura points out that she's the only one that they haven't seen. Poor Mildred. Steele cites the movie T-Men, describing the plot as being that of O'Keefe and Ryder trying to smoke out a ring of counterfeiters. And Mildred agrees, saying, if it's good enough for Dennis O'Keefe, it's good enough for her. And once they're in the car, though, it is obvious Steele did too good of a job.
Oh, yeah.
As they are all overpowered by the smell. Steele sticks his head out of the car like a dog. Laura reminds him that Mildred's cover was his idea before she does the same. And I gotta wonder what the point was of the fish. Like, to make her so smelly people wouldn't want to come near her?
Well, supposedly she's going to be coming in off the dock as as somebody who worked on a fishing boat. You're going to smell like fish. If you don't smell like fish, then that might raise some questions.
You probably don't smell, though, like you bathed in it.
Well,
I'm just saying he really laid it on thick, quite literally.
Yeah.
So, aside the bar, they see who they're waiting for, and Steele tells Mildred it's time. He gets out, but hesitates, saying that they should go to Plan B. Steele tells her they don't have a Plan B, and Mildred offers to come up with one fast. Laura assures Mildred that they will be right behind her, and Steele adds, just not downwind. Oh, poor Mildred. She goes in the bar. There's a bunch of men around a craps table. I'm assuming that's craps.
I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, Mildred goes up. I'm going to go with craps. If I'm wrong, someone can tell me. Mildred goes up to the table and asks who the shooter is. One of the men points, and Mildred hands him her money. The man looks at the phony bill And Mildred says, "What's the matter? Don't like big bills?" He throws it back at her, says, "Not that much." Nonetheless, for some reason, they let her in the game. Did that make any sense to you? Because, like, you'd think if they noticed it right away.
Well, there's a lot of questions about this one because the guy picks up the bill, looks at it, seems to pass on it, throws it onto the table, and yet a minute or so later, someone says, "Hey, we got somebody passing funny money." Well, how would they know? I mean, it's just sitting there on the table. The guy who's saying this hasn't even played with it. He hasn't handled it. He hasn't looked at it close. So it just, there's, I've got questions. I've got no answers.
Like, it would have made more sense if he took a look at the money and went, "Hey, wait a minute." Because the ultimate goal of this scene was that they all look at her and they throw her out, right?
Yeah.
It's a weird, they went about it a weird way. They kind of went in a circle as opposed to a straight line. So, but yeah, they toss her out, and just as she's about to get up, she's grabbed by Chester, who tells her to come with him. Poor Mildred gets kidnapped again. She needs a kidnapping bonus.
Yeah.
She needs a
well, and then a bonus if she gets kidnapped while she's dressed, as a bum and smelling like fish, then it's not just double, it's quadruple.
And even more if they return her, because that's insulting too, right? Like, if she's been kidnapped twice and returned twice. So they kidnap her, and then they put her on the truck and drive away, and then Steele and Laura follow. So we go back to what looks to be a money lending business, judging by the sign that says "We cash checks." These places are so predatory.
Oh yeah,
I hate these places. Like, there's a ton of them in my city. Yeah, there's a ton of them. I see ads for them all the time, and they're always in the parts of town where the low income parts of town, right? Because they prey on people who live paycheck to paycheck, and sometimes not even that, and just need to get that extra boost before they get paid again to pay their rent or their groceries or what have you. And it's a horrible business because once you get into that cycle, you can't get out.
Well, yeah. The argument you could make in defense of these businesses and the rates that they charge are that they are taking a chance because the check may not be good, a lot of other factors. And these places popped up when places like grocery stores and department stores stopped cashing people's paychecks for a reasonable, if any, fee. So you can argue that they are providing a valid service and that they are taking a, quote, reasonable cut based on the risk that they are assuming in handling all this. But yeah, it is curious that most of them do wind up in these places that are very low income. Anytime you've got a business that concentrates in those areas, you have to wonder, okay, first of all, you're targeting these people because you have the ability to take advantage of them because of their economic status.
Yeah.
It's tough because at the same time, you can understand why people do those things,
for sure.
why they go to these businesses because they need the money.
For sure.
And it's just, it's one of those things where it's a bad situation, but it's hard. It's hard to just make a blanket condemnation of them because without it, there are people who would suffer in the short term. The argument that you have to look at is, okay, if we get rid of these, obviously this is harming people in the short term. We need to get them past this short-term issue and get them to where they're building up for the long term. And that's where things get tough because quite frankly, as has been pointed out about politicians, among others, there's no money to be made in solving social problems.
No, of course
So
not.
people have a vested interest in perpetuating social problems because they make money from it.
Yeah, and a lot of these places don't just cash checks; they do payday loans.
Well,
right?
that too, yeah.
Gets you into that cycle of, I don't get paid until next Friday. I need to borrow $100 now, but the interest, of course, is 30% higher than what you would get at a bank because, of course, a bank won't give a loan to a person who
it's actually higher than that.
Yeah,
because it may be 30% from today until you get paid next week. And if you look at the annual interest rate, you're actually talking about thousands of percent interest.
Yeah, it's awful because, like you said, the larger problem is the system that creates this need. But hey, that's not fun to solve. So we'll just put up these places.
It's not profitable. So
Anyway, that was just my little mini rant because I've seen these places and I really don't like what they represent, I guess, because as you said, sometimes they're necessary, but at the same time, they shouldn't be. But yeah, we see the woman we know as Grace Kelton sitting, staring at Mildred, her nose wrinkled as she asks what the stench is. Chester says she smells like tuna fish, then adds Chester hates tuna fish.
I got a story about tuna fish. A buddy of mine years ago, his sister was moving and needed help moving. And so he said, hey, look, can you give me a hand? She's got to move. She'll buy us pizza as a thank you. I said, okay, fine.
Traditional payment for helping someone move. Yep.
Yeah. So I get over there and she's got all this big furniture, and it's not just that she's moving from one apartment to the next, on the ground floor.
Right.
No, she's moving into an apartment on the third floor. And the only way to get up is a staircase that is enclosed.
Oh.
And so we've got this huge, heavy sofa and other stuff that's got to go up. And so we're wiggling and trying to get it up and around the corner. Okay, well, there's an opening here. We can stick it out and balance it in place while we spin it to get it up the other half. I mean, it was just a monster. And we spent hours doing this. And at the end, there was no pizza. It was hot sodas and tuna fish sandwiches.
Oh, no. That breaks the social contract.
I was not happy.
That is not okay.
And I mean
no, you pay pizza. That's how this works.
That's
pizza
exactly.
Beer, right?
Exactly.
Like that is like I said, it's a social contract. That's how it works.
Anyway,
tuna. Ugh,
anyway, Chester hate tuna.
Chester's right. Chester has a reason.
Yes.
But yeah, she smells like fish, and the phony Majak, he pulls out a gun. He demands to know where she got the money. Mildred insists she doesn't know. Some guy gave it to her and told her to spread it around. Majak asks, what guy? Steele and Laura open the door, allowing Mildred to point and say, him. I'm guessing that was the plan and that Mildred's not throwing Steele under the bus, correct?
I hope so. Yeah.
Well, I mean, who knows? Because
yeah. Of course, did they tell Mildred that this was part of the plan?
Well, that's right. Like, did she know she was going to get kidnapped? I don't know. Anyway, Chester moves forward, doesn't do anything as Majak tells him not to. Steele congratulates him on the intelligence of their plan, pointing out that there must be 5,000 workers close by who can't wait to cash their checks on a Friday afternoon. Laura adds that she knows it's a money laundering business for counterfeit cash. Majak brags that they must admit it was clever, and Steele gives him that. Laura tells him that Sterling is dead and no one admires a murderer. Majak argues that he had no reason to kill him, and Grace agrees, saying that Laura did a fine job of blackmailing him for us. You can see on her face that statement hits home. Like, she still doesn't feel good about her part that she played, however unwillingly. And that's kind of rough.
Yeah.
And then Majak continues saying he knows that blackmail will not work with Mr. Steele. He tells Chester, well, you can shoot him now. And Steele says, just a minute, urging them to wait. When has that ever worked with, like, hitmen? Chill, I'll just wait a minute.
Yeah. Well,
okay.
Well, in what movie was it? Oh, there was a movie. Oh, Support Your Local Sheriff. One of the people Garner's character is with, and they're in this shootout, one of his deputies gets shot. And so he does. He stands up right in the middle of it and hollers out at the bad guy saying, hold it, just a minute, hold it. And
time out, time.
yeah,
I'm calling
and
time.
in the meantime, he's walking across this open area where anybody could just shoot him. And he's walking over toward his compatriot that has gotten shot. And then just as he gets there, he says, okay, go on. Start shooting him again.
That's like when you're playing street hockey and there's a car coming. Someone calls car and everybody moves off the street and then game on. They go. Sorry, street hockey reference. But yeah, so he tells Chester to wait. Chester asks why he should, and Laura tells him he hasn't got enough ammunition. Just as several men with guns come running in. Why didn't they just come in with Steele?
I guess they just wanted to wait long enough to let the fake Majak and Blondie
to
make
implicate themselves.
Incriminating statements.
That makes sense.
So
and threaten maybe murder because that helps their case. Yeah. So where am I? I lost my spot in my notes. There we go. She tells him they took the liberty of calling the Treasury Department that morning. Just as they're about to take them away, Steele asks for a moment with Chester. He punches him in the stomach, saying, Steele hit Chester, hits him again, Chester hits floor.
Yeah.
You got to give him that. He deserves it.
Oh, yeah.
So then we switch. We're in the office. Laura is doodling on a piece of paper. She still doesn't look happy because it's obvious she hasn't given up on her murder theory. Steele comes in with tickets in hand, looking eager to get out of there. He tells her they can't all be window seats, and she looks up. And she asks him if he honestly believes that Whit Sterling committed suicide. Steele replies that whether he believes it or not, the facts are there. The phony Majak and his cronies are behind bars, and if they don't get going, they'll miss their plane. Again, I point out how much money this agency has wasted on tickets to things they don't attend.
Well, back in the 80s, I'm thinking most tickets, unlike today, where you get non-refundable tickets, I'm thinking most tickets were either refundable, or if they weren't refundable, you could turn them in and leave the value of them basically on credit until you say, okay, now we're going to go. So it's possible that they're not losing as much as we might imagine. I mean, they're probably losing some, but they might have ways of recovering some of that.
I'm not talking about concert tickets too, things that he's purchased.
Oh yeah, okay.
Like he bought tickets to 42nd Street. They didn't go.
Yeah, they didn't.
He bought tickets to and it's probably agency money he's using too. So
yeah,
it's just that.
Well,
yikes.
but can you really get away with using agency money for that? You can get in trouble for that.
Well, he gets away with it. He does a lot with agency money. They got Mildred. She can doctor
if they
the
get
books,
audited.
right?
Yeah, if they get audited, they better have a better excuse than we just needed a break.
Fair enough. Mildred comes in and gives Laura. Well, I mean, I guess you could argue that he gets paid a salary and he's using his salary to do it. But
yeah, I suppose
either way, it's agency money. It's coming from. Yeah. Mildred comes in and gives Laura Whit's autopsy, saying it took her a while, but she convinced Keyes he owed them one. Steele is surprised that she's in contact with Norman Keyes, and Mildred tells him that people in his position can get their mitts on medical files, so he pulled some strings. She leaves, and Steele asks if she always has to be so damn diligent. So she just wanted to check his medical history to see if there was anything that might make suicide more palatable. He asks if there's any evidence, and Laura reluctantly says that according to the official cause of death was a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head, but otherwise he was healthy. Steele grabs the report to look at it, throws it down on the desk, declaring him the paragon of health. It was absolutely suicide. He pauses mid-rant to cite the film The Barefoot Contessa. Laura is confused. And Steele describes the plot, saying that Ava Gardner marries an Italian count and deliriously happy she wants to give him an heir, but the count is impotent, so he has an affair with the chauffeur. The count shoots them both. He looks pleased with himself. Obviously, we're meant to catch up later.
Yes.
So we switch over to Sterling's mansion, and Laura is telling Mrs. Sterling that it's odd how life imitates art. She points out that she's pregnant, but according to the autopsy report, A 30-year-old war injury had rendered Mr. Sterling impotent. Obviously, that's what Steele saw when he looked at the medical records.
Next is coming up a line that they got past the censors.
Yeah, I'll let you point that one out. I know exactly the line you're talking about. Because Laura says, enter Fred Bigelow, male gigolo. I mean,
young, virile, a real comer.
Yeah. And in my notes, I haven't, was that intentional? Yes,
yeah.
Yeah. She accuses them of having an affair and concocting a plan to murder Whit Sterling and make it look like a suicide. Steele adds that it would mean she gets the child she always wanted. He would get the entire business. Mrs. Sterling admits that they were lovers and claims she decided to tell Whit the truth, but she was wrong. She then claims he locked himself in the library and she felt so much like she was to blame, she tried to blame Laura. Steele compliments her on the quick thinking and recovery, but then goes to the window saying there's a hole in her story. She looks at Fred nervously as he pokes a small, is it a pipe? What is it that he pushes through there?
Yeah, I think it's a pipe cleaner.
Okay. Yeah.
One of those little fuzzy things on a thin metal wire.
Yeah. Okay. And so he puts it through and obviously Fred is looking more nervous, saying a very, very tiny hole, and then voila. Laura lays out her theory that she and Fred murdered Sterling and carried him to his office, put the gun in his hand, made it look as if he shot himself. Then while Bigelow makes his way outside, you tie a string to the bolt with a slip knot, run it across the room through a tiny hole in the window pane to Bigelow, who pulls it through. She then leaves, and Bigelow carefully pulls the string until the bolt clicks into place, and then Bigelow gives it a jerk, slips the knot, and pulls it through the window to make it appear as if he locked himself in and committed suicide. My question is, would the hole not cause other cracks in the glass? Even a small one? Because, I know, for example, your windshield gets hit by something.
Mm-hmm.
It might even if it's just a tiny chip, eventually that chip starts to spider.
Yeah, I think there's a difference, though, between a chip and a hole.
Okay.
A chip is an impact damage, whereas I think that there are ways to drill holes through glass so that it doesn't create that. Because a part of what happens when you chip a window is it's not a perfect round shape. It's got jagged, rough edges around it. Even if they're too small to be seen necessarily directly, if you get a small magnifying glass, you could probably see them. And it's those corners and such where the cracks start forming. And if you don't have any of those corners, those rough edges, it's less likely that a crack could develop from it. Plus, it could just be that this window frame was old and had holes in it anyway.
True. That's a good point.
Where the glass is kind of separated from the metal framing and such that's around it, or if it's narrow wood strips, the wood has contracted a little bit, just enough to give them an opportunity to maybe wiggle that glass over just enough so that they can get that string through it. So I think there's ways.
Fair. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Mrs. Sterling laughs nervously and says she reads too much Ellery Queen.
I love that.
I now get the reference because we're 3 or 4 episodes in to the Ellery Queen. It's entertaining. The mysteries are really entertaining. So
I love the reference to this because it is a nod to Ellery Queen, I think, by the author of the episode, because according to Anthony Boucher, who was author, critic, and I guess had some reputation in the industry. He described Ellery Queen as the American detective story. So it's just kind of a nice nod to a classic American mystery author. So
it is. It's quite good.
And really, Ellery Queen is kind of in the same vein as Remington Steele in the sense that they're whodunits. Remington Steele's less of a whodunit than Ellery Queen is, but it's still primarily that, as opposed to some of the other stuff like Dashiell Hammett and such, where it's more fisticuffs and
there's a little bit more noir to it.
Yeah,
I gotta say, since we're commenting on wardrobe, Laura's sweater looks amazing. I've said it before and I'll say it again. She looks good in purple. I like this sweater. Yeah. It just like a bold color on her typically looks really good as long as it's not accompanied by a turtleneck.
Mhm.
And, like I said, a Sgt. Pepper coat.
I'm not
But-
overly fond of the color. Purple's never been my favorite, but you know how I feel about sweaters.
Fair enough. I just think it brings out her skin and tone and stuff like that. I don't know. I like it on her. She looks good. She tells Bigelow that he has exquisite taste in clothes, saying she especially admired the Italian shoes the shoeshine boy had returned the day she met him. Steele says so much so that she got him to break into his apartment. He produces the shoes, and Laura adds that the heels have a distinctive tread that matches the mud outside the window. I mean, even if that's true, that's not necessarily proof. I mean, lots of people could be out.
Yeah, it's not proof, but it's, in context of all the other information and such that they're establishing.
Yeah.
It's decent circumstantial evidence. But my question is, how long has it been?
That was another thing, because if it's rained or something since.
Or a gardener. I mean, this is obviously, they're well enough to do that they would probably have somebody doing lawn maintenance. And wouldn't one of the things they have them do is, rake the dirt in the flower bed so that it's nice and pretty and it doesn't have a bunch of feet prints in it? I think they're stretching it on the.
Yeah, one would think. Steele asked him where he was at 2:15 a.m. the night that Witt was killed, exactly 15 minutes after the murder, when the sprinklers came on, muddying the ground where he stood. Laura tells him the choice is clear. He can take the fall alone or he can name his accomplice. Bigelow, clearly caught, says that I only pulled the string. She pulled the trigger.
And you know what? That doesn't matter. Technically,
no,
I mean, because they're all guilty of, or they could all be charged for murder because they were all participants in it. It's just like if somebody is the getaway driver in an armed robbery and somebody gets shot and killed. That getaway driver, even though they never went inside the building, can be charged with murder. Now, is the jury going to find them guilty, or are they going to, such a poor boy. He didn't know what was going on. He was lied to by his friends. He thought they were just going in to buy some booze and cigarettes, and he didn't know it was murder. Okay, yeah, we'll let him go. You can never bet on how a jury is going to decide, but legally they are just as guilty.
Well, and also, and I don't know if this is the same thing in the U.S., but in Canada, there's going to be in a case like this, there'd be multiple charges. It wouldn't just be first degree murder. There'd be conspiracy to commit. Right. So even if they were to find him not guilty on the actual murder itself, he'd be guilty on the conspiracy to commit it, because that part is.
Yeah, because they're two different things. One is conspiring to do an act, and one is actually carrying out the act.
Yes.
Although prosecuting attorneys sometimes play fast and loose with the rules. I know of a guy down in Oregon a number of decades ago. One body, one guy accused of murder.
Right.
But he was accused of and found guilty on, I believe it was 5 different counts of murder for one body. Not conspiracy charges or other charges. It was 5 actual counts of murder on one body. There's a long and ugly story behind that, including the fact that the victim's brother doesn't think the guy that did it either did it or did it of his own volition, that he was working for somebody else to get rid of somebody who was asking too many of the wrong questions of too many of the right people. But yeah. So thanks.
I can do you one better. There was a young man in Toronto who was murdered. Well, he was killed. He basically took I think it was a streetcar hostage. He had a knife. And the police that showed up shot him 8 times, killed him.
Mm-hmm.
And there was the police officer was put on trial and was found not guilty for murder, but guilty for attempted murder.
Okay.
Or sorry, I'm trying to remember how it was a weird. Okay, so I'm just finding the verdict. So the jury found him not guilty of second-degree murder and manslaughter, but guilty of attempted murder. They accepted the defense's argument that he was justified in firing the first 3 shots, but found him not justified in the second round of shots, thus guilty of attempted murder. So, so he's not guilty of murder.
Okay.
Yeah. I never said it made sense. Anyway, so either way, like that's kind of where he's. She pulled the trigger. Yeah. Okay. So much for true love.
Yeah.
Laura, pleased with herself, declares it a locked room murder. And the only person you really have to feel bad for is that poor baby that she's incubating, because if she's going to go to prison, who knows where that poor kid's going to end up.
Yeah.
Foster system, most likely, but like, oof.
Well, maybe there's some relatives that'll take him.
That's true. We get a scene change. We can hear music playing, and Steele and Laura are sitting together under an umbrella sharing what looks to be a pineapple cocktail. He says Hawaii was the perfect choice, but as the camera pans back, we can see they are not on the beach.
No.
But in his living room. It's raining heavily outside. Thunder can be heard. It seems to rain an awful lot in LA for this show.
Yeah, it does. An awful lot.
And all the planes being grounded. What is it? A hurricane? Since it takes a lot to ground a plane weather-wise.
Yeah, I mean, you've either got to have extreme wind or electrical activity that is so severe that it actually presents a hazard, even though most aircraft are designed to actually most aircraft are commercial aircraft are designed to take a lightning strike. So you've either got that, or at the other extreme, you've got temperatures that are so high that in places like Denver, the air becomes so thin that you can't get enough lift off the aircraft, or in places like Phoenix, it gets so high that the asphalt on the runway starts melting and you can't you can't drive a plane on it.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy that he's using the grounded planes excuse here.
Yeah.
But why not just, it's a shame we missed our flight. That would, I think, work a little bit better. But I guess maybe they would have tried to rebook it or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But then he mentions that if Mildred can hurry back with the macadamia nuts, it will, I'm sorry, Mildred's hanging out on their romantic evening?
No, she's just their cabana boy.
Yeah, it seems odd that they have Mildred fetching nuts for them. I don't know. Anyway, so Laura says
shush. I'm sorry.
Shush, don't do it.
Sorry.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
I won't.
Laura says if they close their eyes, they can imagine they are there. She looks over and sees Steele deep in thought and says that he seems to be sailing somewhere without her. He admits to her that when he was being interrogated, he says by that kleptomaniac, but I guess that's the only way he'd know to refer to her.
Yeah.
It felt in his delirium that she was the one asking the questions. She's intrigued by this statement because obviously that kind of implicates her as a torturer, but she asks.
Or it implies other things.
Well, true. Yeah, maybe he's into. He did write that
50 Shades of Steel, yes.
Yeah, Lord Marchmain's memoirs. Who knows what was in there? But she asks what kind of questions, and he hesitates, calling them disturbingly vague, and adds that he gets the feeling the answers might frighten them both. Literally, the only reason why he doesn't tell her here is because of the writers. I blame the writers on this, because this is clearly let's get them close, but they can't actually have a real conversation, because that would destroy the tension.
Yeah.
And it bugs me because in the real world, you wouldn't bring something like this up unless you intended to follow it up.
In some manner. Maybe not. Maybe not fully, maybe not with a great deal of detail, but yeah. Yeah, you don't bring something like that up unless you either want to talk about it or you want to be led to talk about it.
Yeah. And she asks him what kind of questions, and then he just says disturbingly vague. He remembers. He hasn't forgotten.
No, he hasn't.
Right?
Forgotten.
And then he says, but, I think the answers might frighten us both. Laura gives him an out. I think this is probably the only part of the scene that I don't kind of like grit my teeth at and go, come on, writers. Because she clearly sees he's struggling to tell her something.
Mm-hmm.
And then says some questions are better left unanswered. And then he clicks his drink and said some answers are better left unquestioned. And it freezes because we don't want them to get together yet, so we're going to make sure they don't. Yay!
You know, I've always had a problem with the idea of the forced, I don't know what you call it, separating of characters.
Yeah.
You know, they're going a certain direction, and no, we can't do that because if we do that, then the show won't be interesting. So we're going to create these false and clearly contrived excuses to separate them. And I think of, you know, how many sitcoms have there been that involved married couples?
Oof. Oh, so many.
Did they fail?
Yeah,
after 10 episodes, it's just, oh no, they're a married couple. Nobody has any interest in seeing a married couple because they get along so perfectly well. Hello, Home Improvement.
Yeah.
They ran for 8 seasons on conflict, largely between the husband and wife. I mean, don't tell me you can't do it. Okay, tell me you don't have the skill to do it.
Yeah.
But don't tell me it can't be done because I know it can.
Not only this, the excuse is always that, oh, the tension between these two characters. If they get together, the tension's gone. No, it isn't, because when you have that happen, new problems, new tensions come up.
Different tensions that you had available to you before.
Yes, relationships shift and change. This is how normal situations go in real life. Like you don't just. And we saw that they made it work with Bones.
Mm-hmm.
Bones ran for several seasons after they got married. They got
quite a few seasons.
They made it work.
I had some issues with some of the situations that came up as a result, or not as a result, but during that time frame. You know, we're going to put our hero in danger. Will he or won't he live? We don't know. Well, yeah, we do. He's got a contract for another 20 episodes.
Yeah.
No, actually, it's another 20 episodes and 2 more seasons. So. Again, back with the false tension, but Bones. Actually, they had 2 couples.
Lois and Clark got married in beginning of season 4.
Okay,
right, and they were canceled, but that was because the network got bought out by another network and wanted to tank the show anyway. But 2 couples, because Angela and Hodges get married too.
Yeah, exactly.
And going back to Firefly, Joss Whedon, when he pitched the show to Fox.
Mm-hmm.
Fox was adamant that they not have a married couple on board the ship. He did not want a married couple. He said there's no tension in that. And Joss said, there's going to be a married couple or I'm not doing this show.
Yeah.
And they let him because, it's not a death sentence to allow your characters to evolve.
No.
And
actually, the contrary.
No, because if you tease your viewers for so long, they're just going to get frustrated and give up eventually.
You can only tease a bear for so long before he slaps at you.
Exactly. And in this case, like, you bring up this, you put this scene in there where he says he loves her, something he's never said before, and the viewers would know this. And then you have him bring it up to her and then scale it back.
Never mind.
We're just not going to do that.
Yeah.
Piss right off. I'm sorry, but that's not cool, guys. Like,
no.
Do it or don't. But and I mean, unfortunately, this leads us eventually to Bonds in the 5th season, which could have been done so much better had they just taken that leap of, okay, let's allow them to get together and let's find new problems, because I think it would have been hilarious watching them try to figure out how to be a married couple.
Yeah.
I think that would have been hysterical, frankly.
Yeah.
Given that, they're...
And the thing is, they could have brought some of the same problems that they have now from, the first 4 seasons forward into that, because they still have the issue of him being a fake.
Yeah.
That is always a threat over them. And them both having to work to try and protect that. You still have him with his... one foot in the past, one foot in the world of crime, where there's always somebody coming at him that's either got a grudge or that, has an obligation they can hold over him for something or other. So you still have all these old issues that can crop up
absolutely.
in seasons 1 through 4 that can still crop up afterwards. But now you've got all these other things.
But Eric, as you know, once you get married to somebody, all your problems just go away.
Oh, I found that to be true. I found that to be true.
It's perfect, and nothing else is ever going. None of the issues that you've previously had with this person will ever be an issue again.
That's right. Are you saying that this isn't how it worked for you, Scott? I mean, I'm surprised to hear that from you. Quite frankly,
I'm saying nothing because this is being recorded. I am smarter than that. Anyway, so that is my only real rant about this episode, is that bit at the end where it feels like they're trying to move them somewhere and then they just move them 3 steps back.
Yeah.
And I get that has happened all throughout the show, but this is the most blatant sort of we're going to tease the audience and then take that away because reasons.
Yes.
So. But that's the end of the episode.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I've got nothing more.
Cool. On the website, www.SteeleWatching.com, we've got show notes, links to Amazon US and Amazon Canada.
For 2 movies.
Yeah, for 2 movies. There's also ways to support us, make donations, become a subscriber, buy us a coffee, whatever.
And in that vein, as we've mentioned in the past, if you are a financial supporter and as somebody who's providing us with finances to help cover our costs or some of our costs, you get to watch these recording sessions live. And we did have a couple of people drop in and we thank them. You know who you are. We won't mention your names because we don't do that.
You're awesome. We love you.
Yes,
thank you.
And thank you for joining us. And we definitely appreciate their dropping in. And they made some comments, nothing that was going to affect anything we said. So we didn't acknowledge the comments, but they were there and they did make comments. And that's something that you can do if you choose to become a financial subscriber. And then we also have links so that you or your friends can follow the podcast in your favorite podcast player. Links to the official Steele Watching Facebook, Twitter, Instagram pages, and a link to the unofficial but always fun Steele Watchers fan group on Facebook.
Yep.
Did I say Facebook? Was I repetitively redundant on that? Did I repeat myself several times over and over again?
I don't think so.
I think I said Facebook Steele Watchers fan group on Facebook.
Oh, maybe I've made sense to me. I was fine with that.
Yeah. Anyway, all right.
The next episode will be Illustrated Steel,
which is a fun one.
It is a fun one. I like that.
Yes. All right. I've got nothing more.
Nope, me either. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody. Hey, everybody. Eric and Sara here. Just a quick announcement to let you know that, yes, we do appreciate everyone who listens, participates, and supports the podcast in whatever way you do. But we wanted to give an extra thank you to those who are so graciously giving to be monthly financial supporters.
We are making live streams of our recording sessions available to anyone who is a monthly financial supporter. So not only can you watch us live as we record our podcast episodes, you will be getting access to the raw, behind-the-scenes, unedited version of episodes before they get officially released.
And Sara, does that include our mistakes and screw-ups and our humiliating? Yes,
every single one of them.
Every single one of them, yes. So again, this is just an extra thank you to those who are going above and beyond. But whether you choose to become a monthly financial supporter or not, we still love you. We want to say we thank you for your support, your encouragement, and your feedback.
If you want to become a monthly financial supporter, please visit our website at www.SteeleWatching.com to sign up.